Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the shadowy, shimmering canals of Tenochtitlan, the heart of the mighty Aztec Empire. It's nightfall, and the city floats atop Lake Texcoco like a mirage, lit by firelight, alive with the distant hum of flutes, and threaded with the scent of wood smoke and massa. You're not just watching from afar, you're here, standing barefoot on a damp wooden dock, the cool boards pressing into your heels as you try to take it all in. The city gleams with whitewashed temples, bustling causeways, and floating gardens that seem to drift in the evening breeze. If you listen closely, you'll catch the splash of a canoe paddle, the soft laughter of families, and, just maybe, the anxious chatter of someone realizing they've forgotten to pay tribute. Spoiler that someone might be you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is by you. Drop your location and your local hour in the comments so we can see how far this sleepy journey reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're probably not going to survive this night in Tenochtitlan, at least not by modern standards. The city pulses with activity even as the sun sets, and you, a not-so-hardened time traveler, are about to test your luck amid a civilization that's equal parts dazzling and demanding. The air carries a cool, watery freshness, tinged with the aroma of toasted amaranth and the distant tang of incense. You glance up and see the stars peeking through the mist, sharing the sky with the torch-lit silhouette of the Templo Mayor. The city's architecture is a dream for the senses, a labyrinth of canals and causeways, floating gardens called chinampas blooming with marigolds and squash, and everywhere, the low murmur of thousands of people settling into the night. But don't get too cozy, your reed mat bed isn't waiting just yet. You have to earn your rest here, and the journey starts now. Historians still argue whether Tenochtitlan truly glowed with that legendary cleanliness the Spaniards raved about, but one thing's certain, it's alive in ways your sleepy brain might not be ready for. Maybe you'll hear a boatman curse as he fends off a particularly bold axolotl, or the low call of a night vendor hawking fresh tlacoyos, bean-stuffed masa cakes that always sell out before dawn. A lesser-known fact for the trivia lovers, Tenochtitlan's night markets sometimes doubled as impromptu dating spots. Picture it, awkward flirting over piles of avocado and chili, all under the watchful eye of a chaperoning uncle. You'll want to steer clear, unless you're ready to explain yourself in Nahuatl. Already, the city's pulse is working its spell on you. The challenge: survive until sunrise without running afoul of city guards, losing yourself in the maze of canals, or offending a local with your suspiciously poor grasp of polite speech. Will you make it? Well, let's just say, even the best sleepers might want to keep one eye open. You awaken in the dim hush before sunrise, the reed mat beneath you, only slightly more forgiving than the stone floor it rests on. Your limbs are stiff, your neck is at war with the awkward wooden pillow, and you're already regretting not claiming the spot furthest from the drafty door. The house is a single smoky room, walls woven from mud and cane, with a low fire in the center guttering out its last embers. You hear the gentle shuffle of your host, your Aztec family, for tonight, murmuring in Nahuatl as they prepare for the day ahead. Outside, the city is not yet awake, but the soft lap of water against the Chinampa banks and the distant croak of frogs signal that it soon will be. You inhale deeply, and the air is thick with the aroma of last night's burnt maize, mingled with an odd sweetness. It's the scent of copal incense, wafting from a neighbor's shrine, already calling out to the gods for good luck. You try to stretch quietly, but the woven reeds creak, earning you a sleepy side eye from a young girl sharing your mat. She promptly rolls over, wrapping her cloak tighter, as if to say, rookie mistake. Historians still debate whether Aztec homes were truly as crowded as the old chroniclers described, or if that was just the Spaniards being dramatic. Tonight, though your home is bustling, 2 adults, 3 children, a grandmother who snores like a distant drum, and, surprise, a very alert Zoloit squintly dog who is now sniffing your toes with grave suspicion. You try not to flinch. You remember, from last night's whispered warnings, that these hairless dogs are both beloved pets and sacred animals, believed to guide souls in the afterlife. On the plus side, they're also said to keep evil spirits and, less romantically, rats at bay. Suddenly, there's a commotion by the door. The eldest son is already up, splashing cold water on his face from a painted clay jug. You wince just watching. Water is precious here, carried in from the city's aqueducts, and the morning ritual is brisk. Cleanse your face, hands, and feet, then pass the jug to the next in line. You steel yourself, mimicking the others, and gasp as the chill hits. The grandmother cackles softly. It seems you've passed the first test. Breakfast prep is underway, and you're invited to help. A pile of maize dough sits in a bowl, and you're handed a stone roller to help crush more kernels for tamales. Your arms ache almost instantly, but you try to keep up, sneaking glances at the practiced hands around you. The youngest child is expertly folding leaves, while the mother hums a tune, her voice rising and falling with the rhythm of the work. You wonder if you'll ever get the dough to the right consistency, or if you'll just be remembered as the guest who ruined breakfast for everyone. A quirky tidbit: some Aztec households kept tiny turkeys as living alarm clocks. You're just about to ask if there's one here when a shrill gobble answers for you from somewhere behind the door. That's your cue to hurry up. These birds mean business, and no one wants a peck on the ankle before dawn. As you fumble with the maize, you catch a whiff of something pungent. The grandmother is smearing her face with a thick, greenish paste. You try not to stare, but she winks and says something to the mother, who laughs and explains. It's a sunblock made from crocodile dung and herbs. Effective, if you're brave enough. Historians still argue about how widely this odorous concoction was used versus more fragrant alternatives. Before you can finish rolling the last maize ball, the city begins to stir. Distant drumming ripples through the chill air, signaling the first temple rites of the day. Your borrowed tunic feels scratchy, your stomach is already rumbling, and the reality of surviving a full day here, without the help of modern comforts, is starting to settle in. As the house empties, you're nudged toward the door, clutching a steaming tamal, half wrapped in a maize leaf. The solo dog trots at your side, tail wagging now that you've proven yourself. You step out into the pre-dawn light, the stone alley gleaming with dew, and realize that your adventure has only just begun. Try not to trip over the turkey. The sky is painted in gentle hues of lavender and gold as you step outside, blinking against the early light. It's a world away from your usual commute, a maze of narrow stone paths, reed fences, and arching canals that wind through the heart of Tenochtitlan. You quickly realize that street is a generous word here. Most thoroughfares are either raised causeways or slender boardwalks stretching across the water. Every step is an adventure in balance, especially when you're groggy from sleep and still wrestling with a half-eaten tamal. The city itself is waking up in layers. You pass by neighbors hauling baskets of squash blossoms and chayote, their faces still soft with sleep. Somewhere nearby, a group of young boys are already splashing each other with water drawn from the canal, their laughter echoing off the adobe walls. It's a gentle chaos, orderly, yet unpredictable enough to keep you on your toes. Navigating these streets isn't just about avoiding a tumble into the water. The Chinampus, those legendary floating gardens, are everywhere. Rectangles of rich, dark soil buoyed by roots and reeds, crowded with corn, beans, and flowers. Stepping too close to the edge, you're reminded of the city's unofficial rule. Wet feet, lost dignity. The mud here is legendary for its stickiness. Legend has it, one unlucky priest once lost a sandal and an hour of his life to a particularly aggressive patch of Chinampa muck. You make a mental note to walk with care. Historians still debate just how crowded and labyrinthine these water streets really were. Some claim you could cross the city in a few brisk hours. Others argue that getting lost was a daily hazard, especially for visitors. Right now, all you know is that your sense of direction is already failing you. Was your host's house near the flower market or the chili stalls? And was that canoe supposed to be heading north or west? A lesser-known fact, Tenochtitlan's canals buzzed with traffic jams long before modern cities. Canoes piled with vegetables, firewood, or even the occasional nobleman's pet jaguar created slowdowns that would make a modern commuter sigh with recognition. You hesitate as a flotilla of traders glides by, their boats stacked high with goods, their shouts forming a percussive rhythm over the slap of wooden paddles. You try to blend in, keeping your head down, though your wobbly steps probably give you away as a rookie. The boardwalks themselves are a marvel. Every few yards, you spot a little bridge or a narrow plank laid across the water, some sturdy, some suspiciously bouncy. The city's engineers have built a network so intricate that even locals sometimes squint at the crossroads. trying to recall which way leads to the market and which leads straight into someone's private garden. More than one visitor has found themselves sheepishly apologizing to an old woman as they stumble into her squash patch, arms flailing for balance. You pause for a moment, listening to the city's soundtrack, the distant thump of temple drums, gulls shrieking overhead, and the soft murmur of narwhal bubbling up from every doorway. Somewhere, a fish vendor is already calling out the morning's catch, the scent of fresh tilapia mingling with the sweet aroma of marigolds. A quirky tidbit: some of the city's causeways are guarded by children tasked with collecting a toll, a handful of beans, or a joke, depending on their mood. Today, you're lucky. The two boys lounging near the nearest bridge seem more interested in their game of patolia dice, like board game, than in shaking down travelers. Still, you offer them your best lopsided grin as you pass, just in case. Historians still argue whether the city's canal network was as sophisticated as the Spanish chroniclers described, or if those tales were tinged with a bit of old-world exaggeration. What's clear is that you, clumsy outsider, are already earning a few curious glances as you tiptoe your way across a particularly wobbly plank, arms windmilling for balance. A sudden splash behind you. A woman has lost hold of her basket, and a flotilla of squash is bobbing merrily toward the main market. You consider helping, but before you can, a gaggle of giggling children is already on the rescue, scooping up vegetables and returning them with practiced hands. No one seems too bothered. This is city life, after all. As you finally reach the far side, you realize you've survived your first foray into Tenochtitlan's streets, mostly dry, a little more awake, and with a new respect for anyone who can navigate a floating city before breakfast. Just don't ask how you'll find your way back. Your journey into the heart of Tenochtitlan continues, guided by the rumbling of your stomach and the comforting aroma of food wafting through the air. Breakfast in the Aztec capital is an event that's as much about survival as it is about taste, especially for a modern palate. You find yourself drawn toward the open courtyard of your host's home, where the family gathers around a low table, the morning light slanting through the woven reed walls. On the menu, maize, of course. Corn is to the Aztecs what whip-fi is to you. Essential, omnipresent, and a little bit mysterious if you think too hard about how it actually works. Today's breakfast includes steaming tamales, each one wrapped in a pale green leaf and stuffed with beans, squash, and occasionally a hint of chili. There's also a toll, a thick, warm beverage made from maize and flavored with honey or cacao, served in clay cups that feel satisfyingly heavy in your hands. You take a tentative bite of tamal, expecting blandness, but are greeted instead by a medley of subtle flavors, earthy, slightly sweet, with a smoky kick from the fire, roasted peppers. It's not exactly your usual cereal and milk combo, but it's oddly comforting. The youngest child eyes your technique, giggling softly as you fumble with the sticky masa. You do your best to appear competent, but it's clear you're the entertainment for this meal. A quirky tidbit during festival days: a breakfast might include amaranth energy bars, mixed with honey and sometimes shaped into tiny gods, a kind of ancient granola snack with a sacred twist. Today, though, you're spared the theological chewing. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs truly consumed chocolate only as a bitter, frothy drink, or if they sometimes indulged in sweeter versions for special occasions. Your cup of atole is definitely on the savory side, though a pinch of cacao has been stirred in, giving it a gentle, earthy bitterness that's surprisingly soothing as you sip. As the meal progresses, you notice how structured the family's routine is. Each person waits their turn to eat, starting with the head of the household and ending with the youngest. Conversation is subdued, but filled with gentle teasing, especially at your expense. The mother slips you an extra tamal, perhaps in sympathy for your effort, while the grandmother starts humming a song that floats lazily around the table. Outside, the city's noise is building. A distant trumpet signals the opening of the main market, and the clatter of wooden sandals on stone grows louder. The eldest son stands, bows to his parents, and prepares to leave for the day's work. You're told gently but firmly that it's time to help clear up. Plates are rinsed in a shared basin, and leftover scraps are set aside for the family's solo dog, who, having forgiven you for your earlier awkwardness, sits patiently at your feet. A mainstream fact: maize was so important to the Aztec diet that they marked the farming calendar with festivals honoring various stages of the corn plant's growth. Missing breakfast wasn't just a bad idea, it was almost sacrilegious. As you help tidy up, you glance around the house and spot a small clay idol perched on a niche above the hearth. It's decorated with feathers and painted with red ochre. You're told it represents Chicomic-Al, the maize goddess herself. The family offers a brief prayer of thanks, and you're encouraged to join in. You mumble something respectful, hoping the goddess will forgive your accent. A quirky moment in some homes, it was customary to sprinkle a few drops of atoll on the floor for the household spirits. The grandmother does this now, with a sly wink in your direction, muttering that it keeps the house from getting cranky. Historians still debate whether these household rituals were strictly observed by everyone or mostly reserved for particularly superstitious grandmothers. With breakfast finished and your belly full, you feel both energized and slightly on edge. The food has been a comfort, but you know that the day ahead holds countless more challenges. You glance at the open door, sunlight streaming in, and realize that surviving a day in Tenochtitlan isn't just about dodging danger. It's about adapting to a rhythm, a flavor, a way of life that's as rich and complex as the city itself. You step outside, wiping atoll from your chin, and prepare to face whatever comes next. Just remember maize is your friend, but watch out for those chili peppers. Aztec cooks have a reputation for sneaking in a surprise or two. You step from the warm, smoky glow of breakfast into the brisk morning air, and immediately realize you're underdressed, or perhaps overdressed, depending on whom you ask. Getting dressed in Tenochtitlan is a social minefield, and today, you're about to navigate it in style, or lack thereof. Your borrowed Magui fiber tunic itches just enough to remind you that Aztec fashion is as much about status as it is about comfort. First, you reach for your cloak, a simple ayat woven from agave fibers. It's practical, sturdy, and, let's be honest, about as soft as a doormat. The mother of the house offers an approving nod. Apparently, you've avoided the worst fashion fox pass, at least for now. Around you, the city is a mosaic of color and texture, men and boys in knee-length maxlart loincloths, women in elegant hipple tunics embroidered with swirling patterns, and elders swathed in thick shawls against the morning chill. Here's the catch, eh? What you wear isn't just about warmth or modesty. It's a silent shout about who you are, where you stand, and what you owe the empire. Only nobles are allowed cotton cloaks, dyed in vibrant blues and reds. If you're caught dressing above your station, the consequences range from a stern talking to a rather public shaming involving the confiscation of your beloved cloak. Historians still argue whether these sumptuary laws were strictly enforced, but one thing's for certain: nobody wants to be noticed for the wrong reason. As you wrestle with the sash on your tunic, the youngest child sidles up, giggling at your clumsy knots. She demonstrates the double loop technique, her nimble fingers tying a bow that would make any scout leader jealous. In return, you offer a lopsided grin and a silent vow to practice in private. You notice the grandmother appraising your ensemble, her eyes sharp. She points to a battered reed hat hanging by the door and gestures for you to wear it. You oblige, and she nods approvingly. Sun protection and humility in one handy accessory. A quirky tidbit: feathers are the height of high fashion here. Bright quetzal plumes, scarlet macaw tails, even the occasional hummingbird feather are coveted status symbols. You spot a street vendor selling feathered fans and hair ornaments. Their colors so vivid they make your modern wardrobe look like a grayscale photograph. The vendor catches your gaze and gives you a wink, as if to say, "Someday, friend, someday." As you walk through the neighborhood, you notice the subtle pecking order at play. The laborers wear plain, practical tunics, sometimes patched and faded, while the city's merchants and artisans sport stripes and embroidered hems. The real showstoppers, though, are the warriors and priests. The former strut about in jaguar pelts and eagle feathers, their faces streaked with ochre. The latter glide past in immaculate white cotton, heads held high, every inch the picture of authority. Historians still debate whether these visual cues were always taken seriously, or if people sometimes bent the rules for a festival or special event. Some say the lines were blurrier than official edicts suggest. Others insist the threat of punishment kept everyone in their sartorial lane. Either way, you're not about to test the boundaries, especially after hearing last night's story about a merchant who got a little too bold with his feathered cape and ended up sweeping temple steps for a week. One mainstream fact: Aztec clothing was designed with the climate in mind. The loose, airy weaves kept people cool during the day, and could be layered for warmth at night. Cotton was a luxury, grown in distant provinces and paid as tribute if you're sporting it. You'd better have the receipts. You make a mental note to keep your new hat on, particularly as the sun climbs higher. The streets are already filling with neighbors, some on their way to the market, others headed to temples or workshops. You take in the gentle flutter of capes, the swish of skirts, and the glint of shell and jade jewelry. Everyone seems to know exactly where they fit, and now, thanks to your borrowed outfit and that helpful little girl, you blend in just enough to pass for a local. Well, almost. Just as you're feeling confident, a young boy dashes past and tugs playfully at your sash, nearly undoing all your hard work. You catch your tunic just in time, offering a sheepish bow to a passing elder who shakes his head, amused. First time, his eyes seem to say. You nod, grinning, and continue on, clothes intact, dignity mostly preserved, and a newfound appreciation for the art of getting dressed in the world's most fashionable floating city. You shuffle forward, your new hat casting a lopsided shadow as you rejoin the household for the next essential part of the morning freshening up. Hygiene in Tenochtitlan is both a sacred duty and a practical necessity, and you're about to discover why even the clean, freak Spaniards were impressed by the city's sparkle. The mother beckons you to the back of the house, where a shallow clay basin sits beside a low wall. You watch as she pours water, careful not to spill a drop. Fresh water is a prized resource, carried in from the Chapultepec aqueduct and guarded like treasure. As you wait your turn, the eldest son steps up first, scooping the chilly water to splash over his face, arms, and chest. He grimaces, but you can tell it's a familiar ritual. Bathing each morning is a must, both to honor the gods and to shake off the sticky heat of the night. When your turn comes, you grit your teeth and mimic the family's technique. The cold water is an instant alarm clock, but you manage to keep your dignity, mostly. You notice that, unlike in your world of perfumed soaps and endless towels, here the tools are simple: a handful of crushed soapwort leaves and a rough cloth. The result is surprisingly refreshing, your skin left tingling and clean. A quirky tidbit: Aztec nobles often used a scrub made from ground maize, and sometimes even volcanic ash for a little exfoliation. You eye the nearby bowl of maize with suspicion, wondering if your breakfast leftovers are about to double as a skincare routine. The grandmother, spotting your hesitation, grins and offers a pinch of the maize scrub for your hands. You rub it in, marveling at the gentle grit, and feel oddly pampered for someone living in the 15th century. Next comes incense. The mother lights a chunk of copal resin, its sweet smoke curling lazily upward. She wafts it around herself, then passes the smoking bowl to you. You breathe in, your nose filling with the resin's sharp, earthy aroma. It's said to cleanse not just the body, but the spirit as well. You try not to cough, a rookie mistake that would give you away instantly. The mother smiles, approving your effort. Historians still debate whether incense rituals were a daily occurrence for ordinary citizens or reserved for temple days and big events. Today, your household seems to enjoy the extra touch of ceremony. Suddenly, the grandmother returns, face smeared with her mysterious greenish sunblock. She offers you the bowl with a mischievous twinkle. You hesitate, remembering last night's warning about crocodile dung. The paste smells herbal, with just a whiff of something swampy. You dab a little on your cheeks, bracing for the worst, but it's not so bad. The youngest child points and bursts into laughter, and you realize you're now sporting the season's hottest look, at least among grandmothers and time travelers. A mainstream fact: the Aztecs took pride in personal cleanliness, with public bathhouses das Temazcal scattered throughout the city. These sweat baths were part spa, part social club, and part health clinic. The steam, heated by hot stones, was believed to cleanse the soul as well as the pores. You spot a domed bathhouse down the lane and make a mental note to ask for a tour, if you survive the rest of the day. As you finish your ablutions, a chorus of birds erupts overhead. Someone next door has released a cage of songbirds to greet the sun, their trills and chirps blending with the city's rising hum. You feel awake now, if a bit out of place, and definitely smellier than you'd like. But here, in the heart of Tenochtitlan, that's just part of the experience. You join the family outside, blinking in the new daylight. The solo dog, freshly washed and proud, struts ahead as your unofficial escort. You're ready to face the world, or at least the next round of Aztec adventures. And if anyone asks about your glowing cheeks, you'll just say you're testing a new, ancestral skincare routine. Who knows? Maybe it'll catch on. With your spirit and your paws freshly cleansed, you set off for one of the most dazzling, dizzying spectacles in Tenochtitlan, the marketplace at Tlatelolco. The city is alive with anticipation, and you're swept along by a stream of neighbors, baskets bouncing on their hips, laughter peppering the air. The closer you get, the thicker the crowd grows, until the narrow path opens into a vast plaza pulsing with energy. Tlatelolco is more than just a market, it's the beating heart of commerce, gossip, and daily life. Imagine a space large enough to hold tens of thousands, bordered by temples and administrative buildings, every inch buzzing with traders selling everything from jade beads to live turkey. The sounds, a riot of haggling, drumming, and the occasional bleating goat, hit you like a wave. The scents are just as intense, mingled perfume of roasting maize, crushed herbs, and the not so distant hint of fish and chili. You edge your way through the crowd. Merchants call out their wares in sing-song voices, each one trying to outdo the last.
Fresh chayote! Sweet honey cakes! Obsidian knives, sharp enough for the gods!
A woman with a tray of steaming tamales offers you a sample. You accept, remembering the etiquette, never take the biggest one, and always thank her with a half bow. She grins and slips you an extra for being polite, a rare win for the rookie. Historians still debate just how organized the market. Some chroniclers describe a near military level of regulation, with judges on hand to settle disputes and rows of stalls arranged by product. Others argue it was more chaotic, with people squeezing in wherever there was space. Today, you notice both order and chaos, a section for pottery, another for feathers, but everywhere, a sense that rules are flexible if you know the right people. A quirky tidbit: cacao beans serve as currency, but inflation is a real concern. You overhear one trader grumbling that last year, 3 beans bought a tortilla, now it's 4, and don't even ask about avocados. You clutch your small pouch of bean, feeling suddenly protected. A sharp-eyed boy offers you a carved flute in exchange for a handful of bean. You hesitate, remembering your host's warning. Never spend all your cacao in one place. You shake your head, and he shrugs, scampering off to try his luck elsewhere. You wander deeper into the maze, dodging a runaway turkey and a pair of elderly women locked in fierce haggling over a basket of squash blossom. Every few steps, you're accosted by new sights and smells: a mound of vanilla pods, a string of dried fish, a pyramid of bright red chili that makes your eyes sting just looking at. Suddenly, a commotion erupts near the center of the plaza. A noblewoman, resplendent in a cloak embroidered with jade, is arguing with a merchant over the quality of his turquoise bead. A crowd gathers. You edge closer, curious, only to be gently nudged back by a market official wielding a feathered staff. "Keep moving," he says, not unkindly. "There's business to be done." You oblige, grateful for the excuse to retreat. Aztec justice can be swift and public, and you're not looking to star in today's market drama. A mainstream fact: the Tlatelolco market was so renowned that Spanish conquistadors, hardened by years of European trade, were stunned by its order, size, and vibrancy. Some even called it the most impressive market they'd ever seen, a grudging compliment, but a compliment nonetheless. You find yourself drawn to a stall selling tiny clay whistles shaped like animals. The vendor demonstrates, producing a trilling song that sounds uncannily like a bird. You laugh, and he offers you one for a single cacao bean. This time, you accept, tucking the whistle into your pouch as a keepsake. Historians still argue whether the cacao-based economy truly protected everyone from poverty or left some folk scrambling. As you watch a young girl count her coins, her eyes narrowed in concentration, you suspect the answer is somewhere in between. By the time you leave, your senses are overloaded, your pouch a little lighter, and your respect for the art of Aztec commerce much, much greater. You made it through the market's organized chaos, with only a few near misses. No small feat for a first-timer in the floating city. You emerge from the bustling throng of Tlatelolco with your head spinning, clutching your clay whistle, and what's left of your cacao beans. But in Tenochtitlan, the real adventure starts the moment you try to get anywhere, because the streets, canals, and even the air itself are full of surprises and hazards that make city life a daily obstacle course. Your path home is anything but straightforward. You tiptoe along a narrow causeway, careful to avoid the slippery moss that seems to take special pleasure in sabotaging new arrivals. A quick glance left, and you spot a group of children giggling as they dare each other to hop from one floating garden to another. You're tempted to try, but then a stray dog dashes past, nearly sending you tumbling into the canal. The dog, a scrappy mix with a half-missing ear, flashes you a look that says, "Welcome to my turf," before vanishing around a corner. This city's wildlife isn't limited to pets. Out of the corner of your eye, you notice a snake sunning itself atop a pile of reeds. You freeze, unsure whether it's venomous or just showing off. Historians still debate whether the Aztecs actively encouraged harmless snakes as pest control or simply tolerated their slithery presence. Either way, you decide that discretion is the better part of valor and give it a wide berth. A quirky tidbit: some Aztec homes kept turkeys not only for eggs and feathers, but also as a kind of early warning system. If a turkey starts gobbling an alarm, it could mean a coyote, or, as you soon discover, a mischievous neighbor's child has snuck too close to the maize stores. You hear a sudden ruckus nearby and spot a turkey in full defensive mode, fluffed up and gobbling at a young boy who's trying to borrow a handful of bean. The mother arrives, hands on hips, and the boy beats a hasty retreat. You make a mental note: never underestimate a turkey's dedication to security. As you navigate the maze of alleyways, you run into one of the city's elite traffic police, or, as he's known, the Kalmakak enforcer. Dressed in a cotton tunic with a feathered staff, he keeps a sharp eye out for rule-breakers, loiterers, litterbugs, and anyone daring to paddle a canoe without a permit. He pauses in front of you, gaze lingering on your reed hat and slightly muddy sandals. You freeze, heart pounding, but after a moment he nods and moves on, apparently satisfied. Maybe you look lost enough to be harmless, or maybe your hat, thanks, Grandma, really does grant you a little luck. A mainstream fact: the Aztecs maintained a surprisingly effective public order system, with enforcers who patrolled the market's streets and waterways. Offenses ranged from stealing and disorderly conduct to wearing the wrong clothing or using disrespectful language. Punishments were often public and meant to shame the offender into better behavior. You continue your journey, trying to keep a low profile. A group of merchants passes, their arms loaded with woven baskets, while a pair of elderly women argue over the price of chili peppers. You dodge a puddle, narrowly avoiding a slip, and almost run headfirst into a vendor carrying a tray of steaming tamales balanced precariously on her head. She laughs, steadying her load with one hand, and offers you a tamal in a gesture of goodwill. You accept, bowing in gratitude, and she disappears into the crowd. Historians still argue whether the city's famed cleanliness extended to every neighborhood, or if that was just a bit of imperial propaganda. Today you notice that while the main avenues are swept and tidy, the back lanes are a little more leaved in. But even here, there's an order to the chaos. Another quirky moment: you spot a group of children racing dragonflies, their laughter echoing along the canal. One girl waves you over, eager to show off her prize catch, a fat, iridescent specimen tied gently to a reed stem. She claims it brings good luck for the day, especially if you're brave enough to let it rest on your hand. You oblige, and the dragonfly tickles your palm before buzzing away, leaving you with a smile and a little less anxiety about the city's unpredictable side. Moving on, you finally reach your destination, a little more streetwise and a lot more appreciative of Tenochtitlan's daily balancing act. You survived snakes, turkeys, traffic enforcers, and even a dragonfly race. Not bad for someone who started the day with questionable sunblock and a pronounced lack of local skills. By the time you reach your next destination, you're already feeling like a seasoned survivor, or at least someone who's earned a few blisters and a new respect for Aztec street smarts. But your morning adventure is far from over. It turns out that, in Tenochtitlan, even education is a test of endurance, wit, and the ability to sit still while your legs fall asleep. You're herded along with a gaggle of neighborhood children to the local Kalmakak, the school for sons and daughters of the noble and priestly classes. If you're from a family of farmers or artisans, you'd be heading to the Telpok Collie instead, a school focused more on practical skills, military training, and the fine art of sweeping every inch of the city's streets. Today, though, you're swept into the Kalmakak, where the lesson plan is equal parts memorization, moral lessons, and keeping a wary eye on the teachers, whose obsidian-studded staffs are as intimidating as their stern faces. A mainstream fact: every Aztec child, regardless of gender or class, received some form of education. This was remarkable for its time. Other societies often reserved learning for the elite. Here, you're expected to recite prayers, learn the names of gods, and practice the intricate art of picture, writing, or tlacuilo. You try your hand at painting glyphs on bark paper, but your feather brush ends up more paint, splattered than precise. The boy beside you snickers, then kindly offers to show you how to hold the brush properly. You murmur thanks, hoping your teacher is too preoccupied to notice your rookie mistake. A quirky tidbit at the Telpot Collie: one of the most dreaded punishments for misbehavior was a midnight dunking in a freezing canal, administered with great ceremony, and, you suspect, a bit of glee from older students. You shudder at the thought, glad that today's worst threat is public embarrassment and a scolding from your instructor. Historians still argue whether discipline in Aztec schools was as strict as the old codices suggest, or if some teachers had a softer side. Judging by the hawk-eyed woman currently patrolling the room, you're not about to test your luck. You settle in for a morning of chanting, copying glyphs, and learning the rules of polite conversation. Never interrupt, always use flowery speech, and under no circumstances call your teacher by their first name. The lesson is occasionally interrupted by the squeak of a reed pen or the accidental clatter of a dropped paint pot. Each time, the room falls silent, all eyes on the unfortunate culprit. Today, it's a nervous boy in the back, who blushes bright red as the teacher fixes him with a glare. She lets him off with a warning and a gentle prod to try again. Perhaps not all the teachers here are as terrifying as they seem. A quick glance out the window reveals the Telpot Collie across the way, where a group of older boys are practicing with wooden swords, their shouts echoing between lessons. You spot a girl racing her friends in a game of patoli, using painted beans as dice. The laughter drifts in, a reminder that even in the strictest settings, children will find a way to have fun. Your own studies are interrupted by the arrival of a priest, his long white robe fluttering. He launches into a story about Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, and the importance of humility. You listen, trying to focus, but your mind wanders. Was it true, you wonder, that students sometimes snuck snacks into class, hiding maize cakes in their sleeves? The boy next to you catches your eye and, with a conspiratorial grin, slides you a tiny piece of amaranth candy under the table. You accept, chewing quietly, feeling like you've passed some secret test. As the lesson winds down, you join the class in a final chant, your voice blending with the others in the cool, shadowy light. You survived your first morning at Aztec school. No midnight dunking, no public shaming, just a slightly smeared glyph and a new friend with a pocket full of snacks. You step out of the Kalmakak, your mind buzzing with new words and your fingers stained with ink. The sunlight seems even brighter after the cool shade of the school, and you blink at the bustle of midday Tenochtitlan. But before you can blend into the crowd, you're swept into another uniquely Aztec challenge, the subtle, high-stakes art of conversation. Politeness here is a minefield, and missteps can be as disastrous as falling into a canal. You gather with your classmates in a shady corner near a flower stall, where elders and merchants gather to gossip, trade news, and, most importantly, practice the city's famous, flowery speech. This isn't small talk. It's a carefully choreographed dance of metaphors, honorifics, and respectful silences, all delivered in the musical cadence of Nahuatl. A mainstream fact: Aztec society prized eloquence and poetic language. There was even a class of professional orators, Kukani, who could make or break a politician's reputation with a well-placed metaphor. Here, you're expected to sprinkle your sentences with references to precious jade, fragrant flowers, and shimmering water. Compliments are indirect, and insults are so subtle you might not even realize you've been slighted until hours later. You try your best, offering a hesitant, "May the maize in your field grow taller than the temple steps." The group pauses, then nods approvingly. Not bad for a beginner. Still, you quickly learn the importance of listening. A young merchant, face bright with pride, recounts his recent success at market using elaborate imagery. His profit is a basket so full even the lake spirits weep with envy. You nod, laughing along, careful not to interrupt. A quirky tidbit in some circles: the highest compliment is to remain silent after someone's story, signaling that their words are so wise they need no response. You witness this firsthand when an elder finishes a tale about a heroic frog who outwitted a jaguar. The group sits in reverent silence, eyes closed, as if absorbing the story through their pores. You barely resist the urge to clap or add your own joke. Sometimes the best reply is no reply at all. Historians still argue whether the famed flowery speech was truly universal or mostly confined to the upper classes and ritual occasions. Some codices suggest even market vendors and children practiced these intricate forms, while others believe it was the domain of poets and priests. Today, here in the marketplace, everyone seems to have mastered the gentle art of saying a lot while revealing very little. You listen closely, picking up on the unspoken rules. Never boast too openly, never question an elder's story, and above all, never rush the conversation. The slow, meandering pace is the point. Each phrase is an offering, each pause a chance for the listener to reflect. Suddenly, you find yourself the focus of attention. An older woman asks about your family, real or invented. It hardly matters, and you scramble to construct a response. My ancestors, you begin, were humble gardeners, tending chinampas until the stars themselves bowed in admiration. She smiles, satisfied, and the group moves on to gently teasing a young man about his failed attempt to woo a girl from the next neighborhood. The jokes are gentle, playful, and always wrapped in respectful language. A final lesson: if you find yourself in trouble, silence is your shield. When the conversation turns to politics and someone pointedly asks your opinion of the city's tribute collectors, you offer a non-committal smile and gaze thoughtfully at the canal. The others nod, as if you've delivered a profound insight. Sometimes, saying nothing at all is the wisest move. As you drift away from the group, you realize you've survived the social gauntlet, with your dignity mostly intact and a new appreciation for the quiet power of words, silences, and a well-timed compliment about corn. You might not be ready for a career as a Kukani, but at least you haven't accidentally insulted anyone's grandmother yet. The sun is climbing, and its warm light glints off the canals as you follow the slow current of daily life toward your next task. Midday in Tenochtitlan brings a subtle shift, a pause in the rush, a moment carved out for sacred duties and household chores. You feel the heat settle on your shoulders as you walk, beads of sweat gathering beneath your borrowed reed hat. Around you, the city hums with a purposeful calm. You're not alone. Every doorway is framed by household shrines, each one carefully tended. You see neighbors making offerings, a pinch of maize here, a bright marigold there, a wisp of copal smoke twirling up to the gods. You're reminded, gently but firmly, by your host's grandmother that nothing in this city is more important than honoring the divine. She presses a tiny clay bowl into your hands, filled with fragrant flower petals and a few grains of amaranth, and nods toward the family altar. A mainstream fact: the Aztecs believed every household was protected by its own patron deity, or teal. These guardian spirits watched over daily affairs, from the health of your children to the success of your maize crop. Skipping an offering wasn't just rude, it was risking the wrath, or at least the inattention, of powerful supernatural forces. You kneel before the humble altar, its surface painted with ochre and decorated with feathers, and do your best to echo the grandmother's muttered prayer. The words are strange on your tongue, but the act itself feels oddly grounding. A quirky tidbit: some families kept tiny animal figurines on their altars, carved from jade or bone, believed to attract extra luck or ward off specific troubles. Today, you spot a miniature monkey perched among the flowers. The youngest child explains, with a conspiratorial whisper, that it keeps away boring dreams. You nod solemnly, silently vowing to find a monkey figurine for your own bedside table. The midday ritual doesn't end with the altar. You're handed a broom of bundled twigs and invited to sweep the doorstep, an act that's part cleaning, part ceremony. It's believed that a tidy threshold invites good fortune and keeps away wandering spirits, not to mention the ever-present dust and stray petals from the morning's offerings. You sweep carefully, but not fast enough to avoid a passing joke from the eldest son, who claims you're chasing away the wrong spirits. You grin, flicking a stray petal in his direction. Historians still argue whether these midday offerings were strictly observed by every family or if they became more common in times of trouble, like drought or illness. Some suggest that, for many, the ritual was as much about community as spirituality, a way to gather, reflect, and gossip under the watchful eyes of the gods. As the heat builds, you watch the city slow down. Neighbors retreat into the shade, children nap or play quietly, and the distant sound of temple drums signals the priests' midday prayers. The air is thick with incense and the faint aroma of roasting squash. You feel the urge to yawn, your own eyelids growing heavy in the golden light. But there's one more task before you can rest. The grandmother hands you a small dish of food and gestures toward the family's backyard shrine, nestled among the chinampas. You balance the offering, picking your way across the floating garden, careful not to tip into the water. The shrine is a simple stone set beneath a flowering bush, its surface cool and mossy beneath your hand. You place the dish at its base, whispering a clumsy thanks to the local water spirit, just in case. The breeze stirs, and you swear you feel a gentle, approving presence. A final, lingering debate among scholars was the midday pause a universal custom, or the luxury of those with enough food and time to spare. You decide it hardly matters. Right now, with the sun high, your chores finished, and the city hushed around you, it feels like the most natural thing in the world. You return inside, washing your hands and feeling a sense of quiet accomplishment. Surviving midday in Tenochtitlan isn't just about beating the heat. It's about honoring the rhythms of life, the gods, and the people who move through this watery, sunlit world beside you. As the midday heat ripens, Tenochtitlan's streets fill with tantalizing scents drifting from food vendors who seem to appear out of nowhere, their stalls little islands of temptation amid the city's stone and water. Your stomach rumbles, a gentle reminder that eating on the go is as much a tradition here as it is a survival tactic. You drift toward a cluster of vendors parked beneath a woven reed awning. The first thing you notice is the sizzle of masa on a clay griddle as a woman skillfully pats out thick, oval-shaped tlacoyos. Steam rises, carrying the earthy aroma of beans and squash blossoms. She offers you one with a shy smile. You accept, careful to bow and offer a cacao bean in exchange, as you've learned from watching the locals. The first bite is a revelation: creamy beans, smoky masa, a subtle kick of chili. You sigh in contentment, and the vendor's smile widens. A mainstream fact, Aztec street food was a thriving enterprise, with vendors specializing in everything from tamales to amaranth sweets. Tenochtitlan's market was a wonderland of quick eats, offering a dizzying variety that could rival any modern food court. Even the Spanish chroniclers, famous for their complaints, couldn't help but praise the city's snacks. You wander on, sampling a bit of everything. A boy with a basket of fresh fruit slices hands you a wedge of prickly pear, its pink flesh cool and sweet against your tongue. Another vendor tempts you with chapulaines, tiny, toasted grasshoppers dusted in chili powder. You hesitate, remembering your host family's warning: don't eat anything you can't identify, or that's too spicy for your dreams. You take a polite nibble, finding the chapulaines surprisingly crunchy and zesty. You make a mental note to brag about your bravery later, perhaps embellishing just a little. A quirky tidbit: some snacks are off limits depending on your social status. Certain delicacies, like axolotl stew or rabbit tamalas, are reserved for nobles and priests. You overhear a heated debate between two vendors about whether a particular basket of tiny freshwater shrimp was meant for commoners or the local temple. The winner, a wiry old man, insists that shrimp are for everyone on festival days. The other vendor rolls her eyes and starts hawking her cactus jelly to a group of giggling children. Historians still argue whether food restrictions in Tenochtitlan were strictly enforced or if festival days brought a happy chaos to the rules. Some suggest that, for the price of a joke or a clever compliment, even the humblest citizen could sneak a taste of forbidden treats. As you meander, you spot a group of young men sharing pulque, a fermented agave drink, in a shady corner. One offers you a small cup, but you recall another rule: only adults, and only in moderation. Too much, and you risk a scolding from the local enforcers. You politely decline, earning an approving nod from a passing elder. You're also reminded that not every snack is safe for outsiders. A woman selling bright red chili paste eyes your uncertain expression and winks: for strong hearts only. You laugh and move along, opting instead for a sweet tamal wrapped in banana leaf, its filling scented with vanilla and cinnamon, an echo of flavors that will someday travel the world. A final quirky moment: you pass a vendor selling tiny, hand-carved spoons, each one whittled from avocado pit. He claims they make every bite twice as lucky. You buy one on a whim, tucking it into your pouch, and wonder what luck you'll need next. You finish your street food adventure with sticky fingers, a full belly, and a heightened respect for the delicate art of snacking in Tenochtitlan. You've survived the maze of forbidden and irresistible treats, at least until the next meal calls. You stroll away from the food stalls, still savoring the sweetness of vanilla and the earthy crunch of chapulaines. But survival in Tenochtitlan isn't just about food, fashion, or even mastering the maze of canals. It's about neighborhood dynamics, those subtle currents of gossip, alliances, and intrigue that flow through every courtyard and market lane. Your first brush with the local social scene comes as you pass a group of women gathered around a communal grinding stone. They're working maize into dough, hands moving in practiced rhythm, while their voices weave a tapestry of the day's news. You linger nearby, curious and a little nervous, until one of them calls you over with a friendly wave. She asks, with a sly smile, what you thought of the morning's market. You stumble through a polite answer, earning a round of approving nods and a few gentle laughs at your obvious outsider accent. A mainstream fact: Aztec neighborhoods, called Calpulli, function as tight-knit community. People share tools, help with repairs, and pool resources for festivals or emergencies. Your host family's Calpulli is no exception. Everyone knows who's behind on their chores, who grows the best squash, and who let their turkey loose again last night. As you help with the grinding, a neighbor leans in to whisper the latest rumor: someone's son was seen sneaking extra cacao beans from the family stash. No doubt, the rest of the block will know before sunset. Quirky tidbit: borrowing maize is a delicate affair. If you ask to borrow too often, you risk being labeled a chocoyotl, a little parrot always squawking for a handout. The nickname isn't exactly flattering, and you overhear it being lobbed at a young man who sheepishly returns a borrowed clay pot. You make a mental note to balance any requests with generous returns. Maybe a few of those lucky spoons you bought at the market. As you're swept up in conversation, the topic shifts to communal chores. Today, a small group is needed to help a widow repair her chinampa after last night's storm. The eldest son volunteers and nudges you to join. You agree, eager to prove yourself, though your chinampa repair skills are, to put it kindly, untested. The work is muddy, slow, and surprisingly fun. You haul bundles of reeds and shovel fresh mud onto the floating garden's edge. The group teases each other, sharing stories and gently ribbing anyone who drops a tool into the water. When you inevitably lose grip of your own shovel, the laughter is good, natured, and forgiving. The widow thanks everyone with a basket of roasted squash seeds, a humble but heartfelt gesture. Historians still argue whether Aztec neighborhood life was genuinely harmonious or occasionally fraught with tension beneath the surface. Some claim the Calpulli system was a model of cooperation. Others point to old records of disputes over land, water, or marriage prospects. Today, at least, things seem cheerful and supportive, though you suspect even the friendliest Calpulli has its fair share of drama. As the afternoon wears on, you're invited to join a game of patolli, the neighborhood's favorite board game. The stakes are low, just a handful of beans, and the right to boast until dinner. You fumble through the rules, lose your beans to a sharp-eyed grandmother, and laugh as she declares herself the true queen of the Calpulli. By the time you part ways, you've made more friends, and maybe a few rivals, than you expected. Your hands are muddy, your knees ache, and you've been gently roasted more than once for your country accent. But you've survived the delicate dance of Aztec neighborhood life, learning that in Tenochtitlan, community is as nourishing as maize and as unpredictable as a runaway turkey. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the city's energy shifts again. The golden light glances off lake water and temple steps, and the work of the day slowly gives way to the pleasures of evening. But don't think you're off the hook. Surviving an Aztec afternoon means navigating feasts, festivals, and, if you're lucky or unluckied, a brush with the city's famous ball court. Your host family has been invited to a neighboring Calpulli's small celebration, an excuse for music, food, and a little friendly rivalry. You're swept along, hands still dusty from chinampa repairs, as neighbors gather in a broad courtyard. The air hums with the sound of clay flutes, hand drums, and the laughter of children darting between the adults. A mainstream fact: Aztec society was famous for its festivals, with dozens of public celebrations, each year tied to the agricultural calendar and the whims of the gods. Even on ordinary days, people found reasons to gather, marking a child's first haircut, a successful harvest, or just the arrival of a cool evening breeze. Some celebrations were solemn, others raucous. Today's gathering falls somewhere in between, with a mix of dancing, storytelling, and the inevitable sharing of food. You're handed a cup of atoll and a slice of pumpkin bread, warm and fragrant. The music swells, and a group of youths begins a traditional dance, their steps precise and purposeful. An elder explains the story behind the dance. It honors Tlaloc, the rain god, and asks for gentle showers and bountiful crops. You try to follow along, mimicking the steps, and nearly tripping over your own feet. Your effort is met with cheers and plenty of encouragement, plus a few jokes about the new rain bringer. A quirky tidbit: some Aztec dances involve elaborate costumes made of feathers and shells, and the best dancers might be invited to perform at temple ceremonies. But at neighborhood gatherings, the focus is more on participation than perfection. Historians still debate whether outsiders were welcome to join, but tonight, your hosts seem delighted by your enthusiasm, especially when you gamely attempt the rabbit hop and almost collide with a clay drum. As the festivities wind down, attention shifts to the ball court at the edge of the plaza. A group of teenagers is warming up, tossing a heavy rubber ball between them. The game, called Tlatchli, is part sport, part ritual, and part spectacle. The rules are mysterious, involving hips, elbows, and a stone ring set high in the court wall. You're invited to try. You hesitate. Stories of legendary athletes and the occasional ritual sacrifice flash through your mind, but peer pressure and a lot of cheering wins out. You take your place on the court, heart pounding. The ball is heavier than it looks, and the first time it hits your hip, you nearly lose your balance. The crowd laughs, but it's a warm, inclusive laughter. You manage a few awkward passes before the game ends, panting and grinning, with the score long forgotten. A mainstream fact: while Tlatchli could be deadly serious at the imperial level, sometimes tied to high-stakes politics or even religious rites, most neighborhood games were friendly affairs. The prize is usually pride, a few snacks, or the right to tease the losing team for a week. After the game, you're handed a cool drink and invited to listen as an elder recounts a tale of the first ball game, when the gods themselves played for the fate of the sun. The story is told in slow, measured tones, punctuated by the music of night insects and the distant splash of an oar on the canal. You glance around at the faces glowing in the firelight. Despite your muddy clothes, sore hip, and less than stellar dance moves, you feel a warm sense of belonging. The city that once seemed so daunting now feels like a place of endless connections, where every moment, be it sweeping a doorstep, sharing a joke, or chasing a bouncing ball, is woven into the larger tapestry of life. You walk home under the stars, the city quieting around you, and realize that, for all its challenges, Tenochtitlan rewards those who jump in feet first, even if you land flat on your back in the ball court. Night settles over Tenochtitlan like a shimmering blanket, the city's lights reflected in the black glass of the lake. The air cools, carrying the mingled scents of flowers, wood smoke, and roasting maize. Your muscles ache from the day's adventures, but the city's nighttime rhythm beckons, an invitation to one last round of survival in the floating city. As you make your way home with your host family, you notice how the city transforms after dark. Lanterns made from calabash shells glow at every doorway, and neighbors linger outside, sharing stories or simply enjoying the cool air. The canals are quieter now, their traffic reduced to the soft dip of a paddle or the distant laughter of a night fisherman. Above it all, the great temples stand sentinel, their outlines sharp against the starlit sky. A mainstream fact: the Aztecs were famously wary of the night, believing that darkness was the domain of powerful spirits, wandering ghosts, and hungry gods. Children are called inside early, and even adults move with purpose after the sun sets. Careful not to whistle or call out, doing so might attract the attention of unseen forces. You quickly learn to follow the rules, keeping your voice low and your steps deliberate. Inside the home, the evening routine unfolds. The family gathers around the hearth for a simple supper: warm tamales, a thin bean soup, and a final cup of atoll. Stories are swapped, some about the day's misadventures, others about legendary heroes and ancient gods. You're drawn in, listening to tales of Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror god, and the time the moon was nearly stolen by a clever coyote. A quirky tidbit: it's common to keep a small amulet or charm by your sleeping mat, carved from bone or shell, to ward off nightmares and bad omens. The grandmother presses a tiny figurine into your hand, a frog, meant to bring dreams of rain and good luck. You place it by your mat, grateful for both the protection and the gesture. Historians still debate how much of Aztec nighttime ritual was fueled by genuine fear and how much by communal habit. Some codices paint a picture of a city huddled nervously in the dark, while others suggest that evening was a time for quiet joy and private connection. Tonight, in the gentle glow of the hearth, you sense both the wariness of the unknown and the comfort of community. Before bed, the family pauses for a final offering at the household altar. You join in, scattering a few flower petals and murmuring a clumsy thanks to the gods. The grandmother smiles, correcting your pronunciation with a gentle pat on the shoulder. As you settle onto your sleeping mat, you listen to the soft chorus of night insects and the rhythmic breathing of those around you. The walls of woven reeds filter the moonlight into shifting patterns, and for a moment you feel suspended between worlds, part of this ancient city, yet always an outsider, a visitor clinging to borrowed rituals. A final mainstream fact: for the Aztecs, dreams were more than idle fancies. They were messages, warnings, and sometimes prophecies. The next morning, you'll be expected to share your dreams at breakfast, and you make a silent wish for visions that are peaceful and easy to explain. As sleep claims you, the city seems to whisper its secrets through the night. Survival here is more than just luck or cunning. It's about respect for the gods, for the city's rhythms, for your neighbors and their stories. You close your eyes, clutching your lucky frog amulet, and drift into the mysterious world of Aztec dreams. You've survived a day in Tenochtitlan. Tomorrow, if you're lucky, you'll do it all over again. Dawn returns to Tenochtitlan in a slow, golden hush. The city stirs first with the distant call of birds from the Chinampas, then with the soft footfalls of neighbors sweeping their thresholds, and finally with the unmistakable aroma of fresh atoll bubbling on the hearth. You rise groggily from your sleeping mat, the frog amulet clutched in your palm, and blink at the pale light slipping through woven reed walls. Before you can shake the sleep from your bones, the youngest child is at your side, eager for your dream report. You rack your brain, cobbling together fragments, dancing frogs, a rainstorm, and something about losing your shoes in the market. The family listens intently, nodding as the grandmother interprets. The frogs bring luck. The rain means the maize will thrive. Losing your shoes is a warning. Be careful where you walk today. You make a mental note to watch your step. A mainstream fact: for the Aztecs, dreams were more than passing fancy. They were a living language of omens and advice. Priests and elders were often called upon to interpret the most puzzling visions, and important decisions, from planting crops to planning journeys, could hinge on a single dream. Even children's dreams mattered, their symbolism woven into the family's plans for the day. Breakfast is simple but filling. Tamales wrapped in fresh maize leaves, a bowl of beans, and a cup of frothy cacao. As you eat, conversation drifts from dreams to chores to the day's tasks. The city outside is already alive, its canals and plazas brimming with energy. But before you're sent out into the world, there's a new lesson to learn: how to navigate Tenochtitlan's ever-changing web of obligations and opportunities. A quirky tidbit: the Kalpulis, messenger, a boy not much older than you, arrives mid-meal, breathless from running errands. He carries a painted shell, an invitation to help with temple sweeping in exchange for a blessing from the priests. The family debates: is it better luck to help at the temple or finish repairs on the Chinampa? After a lively discussion, they decide to split duties, and you're swept up in the flurry of assignment. You join a group headed to the temple precinct. The city's Sacred Heart is busy this morning. Priests, apprentices, and volunteers move like dancers, each with a task. You're handed a broom of bundled grass and shown how to sweep the steps in slow, careful arcs. Even the smallest bit of dirt is treated as an affront to the gods, and you work with a new sense of reverence, aware that your efforts are part of something larger. A mainstream fact: Tenochtitlan's temples were maintained by a mix of dedicated priests, apprentices, and ordinary citizens. Keeping the precinct clean wasn't just about piety, it was a point of civic pride and a visible sign of the city's order and discipline. Spanish chroniclers marveled at the gleaming white steps and spotless plazas, evidence, they felt, of a civilization both alien and astonishing. As you work, you catch snatches of sacred songs drifting down from the main temple, their melodies strange and haunting. The air is thick with copal smoke, and you feel the weight of centuries pressing close. You realize that in Tenochtitlan, survival isn't just a matter of luck, skill, or even kindness. It's a constant dance between the practical and the spiritual, the individual and the community. When the sweeping is done, the priests bless the workers with a sprinkle of scented water and a murmured prayer. You bow, feeling a little lighter, and make your way back through the city's waking streets. The day stretches ahead, full of possibility and pitfalls. But you know now that whatever comes, whether it's a runaway turkey, a tricky conversation, or a mysterious dream, you have the tools, and maybe a touch of frog, luck to survive. As the sun climbs above the temples and the city's rhythm quickens, you step into the day, an unlikely survivor, a student of the ordinary miracles of Tenochtitlan. The city is in full swing now. Boats glide across the glittering canals. Merchants shout their wares from painted stalls, and the clang of a craftsman's hammer echoes beneath the drumbeats from a distant temple. Your morning chores completed, you're given a rare bit of freedom, a few hours to explore Tenochtitlan on your own, to wander as both outsider and almost local. You decide to visit the artisans' quarter, where the city's most skilled potters, feather workers, and stone carvers ply their trades. The lanes are alive with colour and music, bright feathers, spun gold, and the rhythmic slap of hands shaping wet clay. You pause at a pottery workshop, watching as a woman coaxes a bowl into existence, her fingers moving with practiced grace. She catches your gaze, smiles, and invites you to try. Your first attempt is a lopsided masterpiece, but she praises your effort with a gentle, "Even the gods started with crooked bowls." A mainstream fact, artisans in Tenochtitlan were highly respected, especially those who worked with rare materials or supplied the temples. Their neighborhoods thrummed with creativity and competition. The best featherworkers, known as amanteka, produced cloaks and headdresses so dazzling they seemed almost unreal to Spanish eyes. Some families guarded their craft secrets for generations, passing them down with pride. You move on to the stone carvers, where a boy barely older than you chips away at a block of obsidian, revealing the sharp edge of a knife. He demonstrates its gleaming blade, then lets you try carving a simple glyph into a soft piece of clay. Your line is shaky, but the boy nods in encouragement. Everyone starts somewhere, and mistakes are part of the journey. A quirky tidbit, the city's most famous craftsman sometimes received gifts from the emperor himself, extra cacao beans, fine clothing, or even a place of honor at special feasts. But there's also a tradition of playful rivalry. Artisans might borrow each other's tools or leave mysterious carvings as friendly pranks, sparking laughter and a flurry of good-natured gossip. You're drawn next to a stall where an elderly woman weaves bright threads into a tapestry. She offers to braid a colored string into your hair for luck, red for courage, blue for wisdom, green for long life. You choose blue, and as her fingers work, she murmurs a blessing in Nahuatl, her voice soft and melodic. You thank her, feeling strangely at home among the whirl of craft and community. Historians still debate how much freedom artisans truly had. Were they independent, or tightly bound by tribute and temple demands? Today, you see both pride and practicality. Artisans talk shop, swap tips, and quietly compete, but they also watch the street for messengers bearing imperial orders. As the sun climbs higher, you find yourself at a small plaza where young artists gather to paint glyphs and sing impromptu poems. One invites you to join, and you add your own wobbly glyph to the growing mural. The group cheers, then launches into a playful verse about the visitor with two left hands and a heart of maize. You laugh and bow, honored by their gentle teasing. Your hours in the artisans' quarter leave you with blue, threaded hair, clay beneath your nails, and a fresh sense of wonder. In a city famous for its temples and warriors, you realize it's the hands of its makers, steady, stained, and endlessly creative, that shape its heart. You head home as the city begins to slow for the midday pause, the blue thread catching the sun, and your mind full of new stories to share. Surviving Tenochtitlan, you understand now, means more than just dodging danger or mastering the rules. It means finding your place, however lopsided, in the mosaic of hands, voices, and dreams that keep the city alive. You return to your Kalpali just as the midday pause settles over Tenochtitlan, a hush broken only by the distant calls of water birds and the soft murmur of neighbors resting in the shade. The blue thread in your hair earns a knowing nod from the grandmother, who pats your shoulder and hands you a cool drink of chia water. For a brief, golden hour, you rest beneath the awning, listening to the steady heartbeat of the city. But the quiet never lasts long. Soon, the household stirs. Children begin their afternoon studies, elders chat quietly over their weaving, and the men prepare for another round of Chinampa repairs. You're invited to help, but this time, the work is different. Today, you're learning to plant. The Chinampa is a marvel of ingenuity, a floating garden anchored by willow trees and layers of mud, reeds, and compost. You wade ankle deep in cool water as the eldest son shows you how to press maize seeds into the damp earth, spacing them just so. He explains that each plant is a gift from the gods and must be tended with care. The work is slow but soothing, your hands growing slick with rich, dark soil. A mainstream fact, Tenochtitlan's Chinampa system fed a city of hundreds of thousands. These floating fields were so productive that the Spanish claimed they yielded up to 7 harvests a year. Farmers rotated maize, beans, squash, and amaranth, creating a diet as balanced as it was abundant. The system's success was thanks not just to clever engineering, but to the communal effort of entire families and neighborhoods. As you work, a heron lands nearby, stalking fish in the shallows. The youngest child points and whispers that herons are good omens, messengers from the water gods. You pause to watch, feeling the city's pulse in the rustle of leaves and the gentle lap of water against your ankle. A quirky tidbit: some Chinampas are rumored to be haunted by the spirits of old farmers who come back at night to check on their crops. The grandmother tells you, half in jest, to whistle a song as you plant, so any spirits know you mean well. You hum a tune, earning a smile from the family and, perhaps, a little extra luck from the old ghosts. Once the planting is done, everyone rinses off in the canal, splashing each other and laughing. The children challenge you to a race across the narrow path between Chinampas. You nearly tumble into the water, but make it across, muddy and triumphant. Historians still debate how much leisure Aztec farmers and laborers actually enjoyed. Some say the demands of tribute and temple kept everyone working dawn to dusk, while others argue that communal labor and shared meals created a sense of balance, even joy. Today, you feel the truth lies somewhere in between hard work, yes, but also moments of connection and pride. As afternoon stretches toward evening, you help gather herbs, epazote, amaranth greens, and wild tomatillos for the evening meal. The family teaches you the Nahal names for each plant, laughing as you trip over the syllables. You tuck a sprig of epazote behind your ear, feeling, for a moment, almost like you belong. By the time the sun is low, the Chinampa is transformed, neat rows of seeds, shimmering leaves, and the satisfaction of a good day's work. You look over the water, the city glowing in the twilight, and realizing survival here is not just about getting by, but about contributing, becoming part of the city's living, growing heart. You walk home with the family, tired but happy, the blue thread and green sprig in your hair proof of your progress. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight, you'll sleep with the scent of earth on your hands and the quiet certainty that, for one more day, you truly belonged in Tenochtitlan. Evening falls gently over Tenochtitlan, painting the lake and city in hues of violet and gold. The air cools and lanterns glow at doorways while laughter and music spill from every kalpoli. Tonight, you're in for a special treating. Your host family has invited you to join a neighborhood storytelling circle, an event that blends entertainment, teaching, and a touch of friendly competition. Neighbors gather in the central courtyard, settling onto woven mats and low stools. The eldest woman, who serves as the unofficial keeper of tales, opens the gathering with a song to call the spirits of memory. Her voice is clear and strong, and soon all chatter fades to respectful silence. A mainstream fact: storytelling was a vital part of Aztec culture, used to preserve history, pass on moral lessons, and keep alive the memory of ancestors and gods. Professional storytellers, Tlahtoli, performed at temples and courts, but every family had their own lore keeper. Stories were not just entertainment, they were a living library. The first tale is a classic, the founding of Tenochtitlan, when the Mexica people wandered for generations, guided by prophecies and omens, until they saw the legendary eagle perched on a prickly pear cactus, devouring a snake. The audience nods and murmurs. Everyone knows this story, but it never loses its magic. The children, eyes wide, clutch each other in anticipation, hanging on every word. A quirky tidbit: story circles often sneak in gentle lessons or jabs at present company. Tonight, a father spins a story about a clever rabbit who outwits a hungry jaguar by pretending to be a spirit. The children giggle, but the adults exchange knowing glances. Everyone suspects the rabbit is modeled after a mischievous neighbor who is famous for his practical jokes. Next, it's your turn. The others nudge you forward. No one escapes without telling a tale, even if you're the guest. You scramble to remember a story from your own world, quickly adapting it for your audience. You tell of a traveler who gets lost in a city of floating gardens and must win the help of a talking frog to find their way home. The children love it, and even the elders smile approvingly at your attempt to weave in bits of Nahuatl and local color. A mainstream facty Aztec stories often blurred the line between humans, animals, and gods. Many tales were moral puzzles, wrapped in humor or suspense, and it was considered a mark of wisdom to interpret their hidden meanings. At the end of your story, the grandmother announces, "The frog is clever, but the traveler is wise enough to listen. You bow, relieved and just a little proud. As the stories wind down, the circle closes with a prayer of thanks to the ancestors and a blessing for the storytellers. Neighbors linger, praising each other's tales, sharing snacks, and promising new stories for the next gathering. You return home under a sky thick with stars, feeling the power of stories to bridge worlds and turn strangers into friends. Tonight, you survived not by strength or cunning, but by sharing in the oldest tradition of all, listening and being heard. Tomorrow the city will wake again, full of work and wonder. But for now, Tenochtitlan is a city of stories, and you are part of its living memory. As dawn's first light slips over the lake, the city of Tenochtitlan awakens to the promise of a festival day. There's a different energy in the air, excitement, anticipation, and a hint of mischief. You can feel it in the hurried footsteps of neighbors, the extra care in everyone's dress, and the distant sound of temple drums echoing through the cool morning. Today is a celebration in honor of Xochipilli, the god of flowers, dance, and song. The city seems to bloom in his name. Garlands of marigolds and brilliant feathers hang from every doorway, and the scent of fresh cacao and roasting amaranth fills the streets. Your host family is abuzz with preparations. The grandmother weaves flower crowns for the children, while the older siblings practice their dance steps, giggling at each other's missteps. A mainstream fact, Aztec festivals were spectacular affairs, blending music, dance, feasting, and ritual. Each major deity had their own festival, often lasting several days. Everyone, from nobles to humble farmers, participated. Festivals were both religious duties and joyous community events. The city's rulers used them to reinforce social bonds and showcase Tenochtitlan's wealth and power. Your first task is to help carry offerings to the neighborhood altar, bundles of flowers, woven mats, and sweet tamales wrapped in green leaves. The whole Kalpuli gathers, joining in a procession toward the temple precinct. Musicians play clay flutes and drums, while dancers in feathered cloaks swirl and leap, their movements echoing the patterns of butterflies and hummingbirds. A quirky tidbit: during Xochipilli's festival, it's traditional to speak only in verse or song for part of the day. Children challenge each other to come up with the most flowery metaphors, and laughter erupts when someone's poetic efforts go awry. You give it a try, offering a clumsy verse about the sun sipping nectar from the lake. The children cheer, and an elder rewards you with a painted bean for your effort. At the temple, priests in dazzling regalia lead prayers and songs, their voices rising above the crowd. Offerings are placed at the altar: flowers, feathers, cacao, and tiny figurines made of dough. The priests bless the crowd, sprinkling scented water over everyone. You join in, feeling the cool droplets on your skin and the thrill of being part of something ancient and beautiful. A mainstream fact: some festivals included ritual games, athletic contests, and mock battles. Today, you're drawn into a friendly competition of poetry and song, where teams try to outdo each other with clever wordplay. There's also a dance contest, and despite your nerves, you join the circle, stumbling through the steps, but buoyed by the crowd's encouragement. Later, the feasting begins. Platters of tamales, roasted squash, honey cakes, and frothy cacao circulate among the revelers. You eat with your hands, savoring every bite, and swap stories with new friends. The atmosphere is joyful, with music and laughter weaving through every conversation. As the sun sets, the festival's final ritual begins. Everyone gathers around a great bonfire, tossing in flower petals and singing a song of thanks to Xochipilli. The flames leap high, casting dancing shadows across the faces of your neighbors, a living tapestry of celebration and community. You walk home beneath a sky strewn with stars, the night air sweet with the memory of flowers and song. In Tenochtitlan, you've learned survival is about more than chores and caution. It's about joining in the city's rhythms, work, play, ritual, and celebration, and letting yourself be swept up in the joy of being part of something larger than yourself. Tonight, you drift to sleep with garlands in your hair and the music of the festival echoing in your dreams. Another day survived and cherished in the heart of the Aztec world. The morning after the festival dawns soft and hazy, as if the city itself is stretching and blinking sleep from its eyes. You wake to a quiet courtyard, the remains of marigold petals scattered across the ground, and the faint scent of last night's bonfire still clinging to your clothes. The family moves a little slower than usual, nursing tired feet and full bellies. But the routines of Tenochtitlan soon call everyone back to the flow of daily life. You join the grandmother in the kitchen, helping to grind maize for breakfast. As you work, she shares gentle reminders about balance. A city cannot feast every day. The gods love joy, but they also respect discipline. The lesson is clear: celebration and duty are two halves of the same whole. A mainstream fact: Aztec culture was built on cycles of work and celebration, of ritual and rest. After great festivals, there was always a return to order, sweeping streets, repairing chinampas, and resuming tribute obligations. This balance was considered essential for both the city's survival and its spiritual harmony. Outside, the city is already shaking off its festival drowsiness. Market stalls reopen, and canal traffic resumes. You're assigned to help with a task that feels, at first, almost mundane, joining a group of neighbors to clean the neighborhood causeway. Armed with brooms and baskets, you join a cheerful line of sweepers, each person taking pride in making the city shine again. A quirky tidbit: after major festivals, children played a game called Petal Chase, competing to collect the last stray flower petals left from the celebrations. The winner would be named Keeper of the Festival's Memory for the day, parading around with a crown of recovered petals and the right to ask for extra sweets at supper. Sweeping the causeway, you strike up a conversation with a merchant who shares stories of past festivals, some marked by unexpected downpours, others by surprise visits from traveling musicians or distant relatives. Each memory is a reminder that the city is always changing, yet always returning to its familiar rhythms. Historians note that these cycles of festivity and recovery helped make the Aztec capital so resilient. The city's leaders encouraged both collective joy and collective responsibility, weaving them into the very structure of urban life. Temples and palaces might draw the eye, but it was the steady hum of ordinary people, cleaners, cooks, gardeners, and children playing Petal Chase, who truly kept Tenochtitlan alive. As the morning wears on, you finish your part of the cleaning. The causeway gleams, the canals run clear, and the city feels refreshed, ready for whatever comes next. You're sweaty, a little tired, but satisfied. Later, as you sit with your host family over a simple meal, you realize that survival here is about more than adapting to the spectacular. It's about showing up, day after day, for the small acts that bind a community together. That night, you dream not of festivals or feasts, but of clear water and sunlit stone, and of voices joined together in laughter and work. In Tenochtitlan, you think as you drift to sleep. Every day is a thread in a much larger tapestry, your place in the city's story written not just in grand gestures, but in these small, steady acts of care. A few days pass, and you begin to notice the subtle ways Tenochtitlan changes with the seasons. The weather grows warmer, and the city's floating gardens burst with new life. Maize shoots, squash blossoms, and the first hints of ripening chili. You've settled into the rhythms of your Kalpuli, rising with the sun, sharing simple meals, lending a hand with chores, and trading news with neighbors at the market. Yet even in these routines, surprises still await. One morning, your host family announces that you'll be joining a group journey outside the heart of the city, a rare and exciting excursion to the great causeways and the bustling border markets where Tenochtitlan meets the mainland. The prospect of seeing the city from another angle fills you with anticipation. You set out at dawn, walking the wide stone causeway that links the island to the lakeshore. The views are breathtaking on one side. The shimmering lake stretches to distant mountains. On the other, the city rises in terraces of pale stone, crowned by the soaring temples. Canoes glide beneath the bridges, their paddlers singing work songs that echo across the water. A mainstream fact: Tenochtitlan was connected to the mainland by 3 great causeways, each wide enough to accommodate armies, traders, and daily traffic. These causeways were engineering marvels, with built-in gaps and drawbridges for defense. Guards stood at checkpoints, keeping watch for trouble and collecting a modest market toll from traders entering the city. You reach the checkpoint, where a friendly guard inspects your bundle of herbs and jokes about your exotic blue thread and lucky frog amulet. After a quick exchange of greetings and a few cacao beans for passage, your group continues toward the market on the mainland edge. A quirky tidbit: travelers often brought road food, tiny cakes of amaranth and honey or roasted seeds wrapped in leaves. It's said that the best market gossip spreads not in the city center, but along the causeways, where travelers from every direction swap news and rumors between bites. The border market is a revelation here, Goods from distant lands spill across woven mats. Obsidian blades from the mountains, turquoise beads from the north, cacao from the tropical south, and even rare feathers and jaguar pelts. You're dazzled by the colors and the chaos, the shouts of haggling merchants, and the riot of unfamiliar scents. A mainstream fact, Tenochtitlan's markets were among the largest in the world, drawing thousands of people daily. Every type of good imaginable could be found, and the market was governed by strict rules. Special judges settled disputes, and official inspectors checked weights and measures to ensure fairness. You wander the stalls with your host family, learning to bargain with a laugh and a smile. You try a tart tamarind drink, marvel at a dancer's painted mask, and trade a few lucky spoons for a handful of dried fruit. The children beg you to watch a puppet show, and you find yourself swept up in the laughter and applause. Historians debate whether outsiders were truly welcomed at these markets, but today your foreignness is a source of curiosity, not suspicion. A vendor gifts you a tiny clay whistle for luck on your journey home, and the market judge, amused by your attempts at Nahual, invites you to help settle a mock dispute between two children over a basket of beans. By day's end, your feet are sore, your pouch is full of small treasures, and your mind is buzzing with stories. As you cross the causeway back to the city, you pause and look back at the shimmering water, the distant mountains, and the teeming market behind you. You realize that Tenochtitlan is not just a city of temples and canals. It's a crossroads, a living web of journeys, exchanges, and encounters. To survive here is to be open to every new path, every voice, every adventure, never quite knowing where the day will lead. Back in Tenochtitlan, the city's pulse feels even stronger after your journey to the border market. You return with a new appreciation for its endless connections. Every canal, causeway, and marketplace tying together people from distant lands and nearby neighborhoods alike. The next morning, your host family encourages you to rest, but curiosity wins out, and you wander into a new corner of the city, the district of healers and herbalists. This neighborhood is quieter than the bustling market, filled with the scent of crushed leaves, drying flowers, and the earthy tang of fresh clay. You watch as healers, known as Tissitl, consult with patients, grind roots, and whisper blessings over bowls of steaming water. Their hands are gentle but skilled, their eyes sharp with knowledge passed down through generations. A mainstream fact, Aztec medicine blended the practical and the spiritual. Healers used hundreds of plants, chili pepper for pain, willow bark for fever, megi sap for wounds, alongside ritual songs and offerings to the gods. Some Tissitl specialized in midwifery, bone setting, or dream interpretation, and their wisdom was respected by rich and poor alike. You're invited to help sort bundles of herbs, epazote, yarrow, sunflower petals, and the prized cacao beans reserved for sacred drinks and special remedies. One healer, amused by your clumsy hands, teaches you how to crush leaves with a stone metate and how to bind a wound with woven cotton strips. You listen to stories of legendary healers who could cure snakebite with a song or chase away nightmares with a special amulet. A quirky tidbit: some ailments were believed to be caused by fright, envy, or even a wandering soul. Tonali. For these, healers performed elaborate rituals involving incense, feathers, and sometimes a surprise burst of cold water, meant to shock the spirit back into place. Children in the neighborhood giggle as they dare each other to sneak up behind you with a splash, eager to see if you'll jump. One healer, a kindly old woman, offers to read your pulse and examine your dreams. She listens to your description of the night's vision, a city of floating gardens, voices singing from the water, and a frog that leaps from star to star. She nods thoughtfully, mixing a tea of wild chamomile and marigold. You carry the city with you, even in sleep, she says. That is a blessing, but also a reminder: always honor both your waking path and your dreaming one. A mainstream fact top. The Aztecs believed health was a matter of balance, between hot and cold, wet and dry, body and spirit. Diet, exercise, ritual, and herbal remedies all worked together to restore harmony. Major temples even had their own healing gardens and clinics, where priests and Tissitl collaborated. Before you leave, the healers gather for a midday meal of simple stews and tortillas, inviting you to join. Conversation drifts from recipes to remedies, then to city gossip: whose garden has the best squash, whose child has the loudest sneeze, whose dreams are most mysterious. You leave the district with a small pouch of healing herbs, a new appreciation for the city's quiet wisdom, and the lingering taste of chamomile on your tongue as you walk home. you realize that survival in Tenochtitlan is not just about strength or speed, but about learning, adapting, and caring for the community, body and soul. That night, you tuck the punch of herbs under your sleeping mat, breathing in their calming scent as you drift into dreams. The city's heartbeat is steady and strong, and you know that, for another day, you have found your place within it. One story, one lesson, one healing at a time. The next day dawns with a promise of rain. A rare, cool breeze stirs the air and carries the distant rumble of thunder across the lake. The family rises early, gathering under the shelter of the courtyard as neighbors consult the sky and children run to bring in drying laundry and baskets of maize. You can feel a new excitement in the air. Today is a day to honor Tlaloc, the rain god, whose favor means life for every chinampa and garden. A mainstream fact: the Aztecs held Tlaloc in awe and sometimes in fear. He was the giver of rain and storms, essential for crops, but also capable of unleashing floods and hail. Temples dedicated to Tlaloc were among the largest in the city, and his festivals were marked by offerings, songs, and prayers for good weather. You helped prepare the morning's offering: a small bowl of amaranth, a handful of flowers, and a few drops of water placed at the family's altar. The grandmother leads a chant, her voice blending with the patter of the first raindrops on the roof. "May Tlaloc open his cloak gently," she prays, "and make the maize grow strong." A quirky tidbit: on days when rain threatened, children in Tenochtitlan would sometimes fashion tiny frogs and ducks from clay, leaving them on doorsteps or floating in puddles as playful gifts to the rain god's messengers. Some believed that a frog's song could call rain, and so, when thunder erupted, the neighborhood erupted in a chorus of croaks and giggles. The rain begins in earnest, drumming on the reed walls and turning the streets to streams. Work halts, and the city's usual business is replaced with a sense of pause and reflection. You gather with the family, sharing warm atoll and stories while the storm washes the city clean. The children compete to spot the first rainbow, while elders recall years when Tlaloc was generous, and those when he had to be coaxed with special rituals and dances. A mainstream fact: priests and weather watchers kept careful records of rain and drought in painted codices. If storms failed to come, the rulers organized grand ceremonies, sometimes including ritual dances and offerings high atop the Templo Maya, to plead for Tlaloc's mercy. For ordinary people, rain was both a blessing and a source of endless stories. When the rain finally eases, the city emerges brighter and greener. The air smells of wet earth and blooming flowers. You join your host siblings, swelching through mud to check the chinampas. The lake's surface is alive with ripples, and the crops glisten with new hope. A quirky moment: a neighbor invites you to help gather snails and tiny fish washed up by the rain, a rare treat for the evening meal. Children race barefoot through puddles, singing nonsense songs to thank Tlaloc for his gifts. You join in, slipping and laughing, feeling as much a part of the city as the reed huts and floating gardens. As sunset paints the clouds in brilliant colors, the family prepares a simple feast of fresh greens and snails, sharing stories and jokes deep into the evening. You realize that here, survival is about more than enduring the storms. It's about celebrating them, learning their rhythms, and finding joy in every downpour. That night, as you drift to sleep to the sound of frogs singing and rain dripping from the eaves, you feel a deep sense of connection, not just to the people around you, but to the land, the water, and the gods who shape every day in Tenochtitlan. The rain has left the city fresh and shimmering, and life resumes with renewed purpose. Today, your host family is abuzz with anticipation. Word has spread that a traveling troupe of musicians and dancers has arrived from the distant city of Texcoco. Such visits are rare and celebrated. Even the elders seem giddy as neighbors gather in the main plaza, eager for news and entertainment from beyond the lakes. You join the growing crowd beneath a canopy of woven mats. The performers are easy to spot. Their cloaks are embroidered with unfamiliar patterns, and their drums, flutes, and rattles are adorned with feathers and beads, unlike any you've seen. Children weave between their legs, trying to peek inside painted bundles, while adults greet old friends and distant cousins. A mainstream fact: the Aztec world was a tapestry of allied and rival city-states, each with its own dialects, specialties, and traditions. Artists and musicians traveled between cities, spreading news and culture, and sometimes even acting as unofficial diplomats. A performance from Texcoco was both entertainment and a reminder of Tenochtitlan's place in a wider world. The show begins with music, haunting reed flutes, deep drums, and a chorus of voices singing a song in Potik Nahutal. The crowd falls silent as dancers in feathered headdresses leap and spin, acting out a story of migration and the search for water. Every gesture tells part of the tale of longing, struggle, triumph. You find yourself drawn in, heart pounding with the rhythm. A quirky tidbit, traveling artists often brought riddles and contests with them. Between dances, one musician challenges the children to solve a riddle. What sings without a tongue and flies without wings? The answer, the wind, earns the cleverest child a painted shell and a round of applause. Later, adults are coaxed into a tongue twister contest, the plaza echoing with laughter at their tangled words. After the performance, the troupe invites the crowd to try their instruments and dance steps. You're handed a rattle and shown how to shake it in time with the drum. Your first attempts are clumsy, but the musicians encourage you, and soon you're swept up in a circle of dancers, everyone moving as one under the open sky. A mainstream fact, such gatherings were more than fun. They were opportunities to exchange news, settle disputes, and forge new alliances. Musicians and storytellers carried information between cities, keeping rulers and commoners alike informed of distant happenings. Later, as the sun sets and the performers share a meal with your kalpali, stories are traded. News from Texcoco, jokes about the quirks of each city, and legends of ancient heroes. You realize that much of what you've learned about Tenochtitlan, the customs, the gossip, even the songs, has come from these moments of sharing. As the night deepens, you sit beside a visiting dancer who teaches you a simple step and whispers, "Every city has its own heartbeat, but tonight, we all dance to the same drum." You look around at the mingling crowds, neighbors and strangers, locals and travelers, all laughing and moving together, and feel the truth of her words. You fall asleep that night with new rhythms echoing in your mind, grateful for the unexpected joys that come from opening your heart to visitors and new experiences. In Tenochtitlan, every day brings a chance to learn, to share, and to become part of a story much bigger than your own. The excitement of the performers' visit still lingers in the air, but Tenochtitlan is always on the move. The following morning, your host family announces that you'll be joining another group for a special pilgrimage, a day-long journey to the sacred hill of Chapultepec, just beyond the western edge of the great city. The children are thrilled. Even the elders seem eager for this rare outing. You set off at sunrise, walking through the city's waking streets, and then along the causeway, the lake sparkling to your left. The group travels lighting baskets of food for the day, a few offerings wrapped in woven cloth, and garlands of flowers to leave at the springs. As you walk, the elders share stories about Chapultepec, the hill crowned with ancient cypress trees, the spring said to be home to water spirits, the place where rulers once meditated and sought visions. A mainstream fact, Chapultepec, meaning the hill of the grasshoppers, was a site of great importance to the Mexica. Its springs supplied much of the city's fresh water, and its forests offered a place for ceremony, rest, and royal retreat. Even emperors came here to pray, consult sages, and make offerings to the spirits of water and earth. The road is lively. Children chase dragonflies, adults trade news with travelers from other neighborhoods, and vendors sell sweet tamales and roasted squash along the way. You're encouraged to gather a small stone to carry to the top of the hill, an offering for the spirits and a symbol of your journey. A quirky tidbit, pilgrims often tied ribbons or colored threads to the oldest trees at Chapultepec, leaving prayers for health, rain, or good fortune. It's said that the trees remember every wish, and that on breezy days, you can hear them whispering the city's dreams. You reach the base of the hill as the sun climbs higher. The ascent is gentle but steady, the path winding through stands of ancient cypress and wildflowers. At the summit, you find a quiet spring, its water cold and clear. Each person takes a turn to sprinkle flower petals on the surface, whispering a hope or thanks. You add your own, a wish for continued luck in this vibrant, challenging city. The elders lead a brief ceremony, offering maize, cacao, and songs to the spirits of water and earth. The mood is peaceful, almost reverent, as everyone shares in a simple meal of tortillas, beans, and fruit beneath the shade of the great trees. A mainstream fact, Chapultepec was also a site of memory and history. Old stories say that the ancestors of the Mexica rested here on their long migration to Tenochtitlan, and that kings sought guidance from the spirits before making important decisions. After the meal, there's time to explore. The children play in the roots of the oldest cypress, daring each other to find the doorways to the world of the spirits. Adults tell tales of past pilgrimages, of rainbows seen in the mist, of dreams remembered, of promises made and kept. As the day wanes, your group gathers the remains of the meal, leaving nothing but the offerings and coloured threads tied to the trees. The walk home is quiet, everyone lost in thought, the city's distant towers shining in the sunset. When you reach your Kalpuli, tired but content, you realize that Tenochtitlan is held together not just by canals and causeways, but by the journeys its people make, together and alone, in celebration and in search of meaning. Pilgrimages like this one are woven into the city's heart, reminders that survival here is as much about honoring the land and its stories as it is about the daily work of living. That night, as you drift off to the sound of wind in the reeds, you remember the cool spring water and the wishes whispered among ancient trees. In Tenochtitlan, every step, whether through crowded markets or quiet forests, is a step deeper into the city's living soul. The days after your pilgrimage settle into a gentle rhythm, but Tenochtitlan is never still for long. This evening, you're invited to experience something new, a visit to the city's night market, the Chianquisli, which springs to life along the lantern-lit causeways just after sunset. There's a sense of magic in the air, lanterns bobbing on boats, laughter echoing over the water, and the tantalizing aroma of roasting maize and cacao. Your host family walks with you, weaving through hushed streets to the bustling lakeside. The market is a swirl of color and sound, vendors calling out their wares, musicians playing lively tunes on flutes and drums, and neighbors greeting each other with warmth after a long day's work. The night market has a different feel from the daytime bustle here. Deals are struck more quietly, gossip is exchanged in whispers, and even the shadows seem full of secrets. A mainstream fact, while the great markets of Tlatelolco and Tenochtitlan drew thousands by day, smaller night markets served as gathering places for local Kalpuli. People came to buy necessities, meet friends, and share news. Night markets were also places where traveling merchants and storytellers could reach audiences who were busy during the day. You wander between stalls selling everything from smoked fish and fresh tortillas to carved obsidian trinkets and painted gourds. At one corner, a woman demonstrates how to grind cacao on a stone, letting customers taste her rich, spiced chocolate drink. Children cluster around a puppeteer, their faces lit by the flicker of oil lamps as wooden jaguars and rabbits act out a playful story. A quirky tidbit: some vendors at the night market are renowned for their riddles and games. It's said that a clever answer or a well-told joke can earn you a small discount or even a secret recipe. Tonight, a merchant challenges you with a riddle. What is born in darkness but feeds the fire? You puzzle for a moment before guessing. The cacao bean. The merchant grins and hands you a tiny, painted cup as a prize. As the evening deepens, you notice subtle rituals woven into the market's life. Some people light incense at tiny shrines set up between stalls, offering thanks for good sales or safe travels. A group of young musicians performs a song to honor Xochitl, goddess of beauty and song, while elders reminisce about the market nights of their youth. A mainstream fact: the Aztecs measured time in cycles and rituals, and markets were no exception. Each market had its own calendar, with certain days or nights favored for special foods, crafts, or ceremonies. The night market, in particular, was a place to mark transitions, endings and beginnings, farewells and homecomings. You share a meal with your host family beside the water steaming tamales, spiced beans, and sweet atoll. The lake reflects the lanterns, turning the night into a tapestry of gold and shadow. For a moment, the city feels both immense and intimate, a world of endless possibility and close community. As the market winds down, you help gather the family's purchases and say goodnight to new friends. Walking home beneath a sky spangled with stars, you realize that the city's true heart beats strongest in these everyday gatherings, in laughter, in trade, in the shared warmth of food and story. That night, you fall asleep with the taste of chocolate and the sound of music in your memory, grateful for the gift of belonging in Tenochtitlan, a city that truly never sleeps. The next morning dawns bright and clear, the city shimmering after the festivities and night market. Today, your host family suggests you spend time with a neighbor renowned as a scribe and teacher, an opportunity to glimpse one of the city's most respected but often hidden worlds. You follow the teacher, or Tlaculo, to his small schoolhouse tucked between two canals. The walls are decorated with painted glyphs and delicate codices, rolled and stacked with care. Children of all ages gather here, seated on woven mats, their eyes bright with curiosity and respect. A mainstream fact, Aztec education was highly valued, with schools for both commoners, Telpocoli, and nobles, Calmacast. Boys and girls learn practical skills, history, religion, and the basics of reading the pictorial Aztec script. The most gifted students trained as scribes, priests, or government officials. The morning lesson begins with a recitation of lineage and important city events, students taking turns reading from a painted codex. The scribe patiently corrects their pronunciation, then guides them in drawing simple glyphs: the sun, maize, water, and the city itself. You're invited to try your hand. With a fine brush and a steady hand, or so you hope, you shape a glyph for your name, earning a quiet nod of approval from the teacher. A quirky tidbit: scribes were masters of both words and images. They invented clever rebus puzzles, pictures that represented syllables or whole words, and used them to create secret messages or playful riddles. During lessons, students might compete to decode a glyph puzzle, with the winner getting first pick of the midday snack. The teacher explains the importance of memory and accuracy. History is not just a list of dates, but a living story, one that must be preserved for future generations. He shows you how the codices record everything from seasons and festivals to tribute lists and genealogies. To write, he says, is to weave the city's soul. A mainstream fact: only a small minority could read or write the complex Aztec pictorial script, making scribes both powerful and indispensable. Their work was central to administration, ritual, and the preservation of law and legend. After lessons, students gather around the teacher for stories, some drawn from the codices, others invented on the spot. Today's favorite is a tale about a cunning coyote who tricks the rain god into giving the people an extra harvest. The children giggle and try to draw their own coyotes, some fierce, some silly, all bursting with life. Before you leave, the scribe offers you a folded sheet of bark paper and a stub of red pigment. Remember what you see here, he tells you. A city is built on memory as much as stone. You return home, your fingers stained with ink and your mind buzzing with new knowledge. That evening, you share what you've learned with your host family, sketching a few glyphs in the dust and telling the story of the trickster coyote. The children beg you to teach them more, and you realize that, in this city of artisans and warriors, teachers and scribes hold a quiet, enduring power, the power to shape how the city remembers itself. As night falls, you tuck the folded paper under your mat, a small piece of memory to carry forward. In Tenochtitlan, you now know every story matters, because every story, skillfully told or carefully painted, helps the city survive. A few days later, excitement stirs the city once more. The full moon is rising, and tonight is a festival in honor of Coyolxauhqui, the moon goddess. Your host family prepares for the celebration with a mixture of reverence and festivity, lighting incense and weaving white flowers into their hair. You help string garlands across the courtyard, feeling the anticipation grow as neighbors gather and the first silver light glimmers on the canals. As darkness falls, the city is transformed. Luminous torches line the main plaza, and families carry offerings of maize cakes and polk to small shrines decorated with moon-shaped stones and painted banners. You follow your hosts to a gathering on the temple steps, where priests and priestesses in shimmering cloaks begin the evening with songs that echo into the night. A mainstream fact: Coyolxauhqui, whose name means bells on her cheek, was a powerful and complex figure in Aztec mythology, a moon goddess whose dramatic story of rivalry with her brother Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, was retold every lunar cycle in ritual and song. Her image, carved in stone, was placed at the base of the Templo Mayor as a reminder of the eternal dance between night and day. The celebration is both solemn and joyful. Dancers in moon-masked costumes whirl in slow, graceful circles to the steady beat of drums. The air is thick with the scent of copal and night-blooming flowers. Children are encouraged to tell stories about the moon, some fantastical, some wise, all watched over by the glowing orb above. A quirky tidbit on moon festival nights. It's traditional for children and young people to play a game called Catch the Moonbeam, chasing each other with mirrors or polished obsidian to reflect the moonlight onto their friends. Whoever is caught must share a wish or a secret with the group. You're soon swept into the laughter, dodging beams of silvery light and confessing your wish for more nights like this one. Priests lead the community in a ritual offering, pouring water and scattering petals, asking Koyalxokwi to watch over the city and grant good dreams. The elders chant ancient prayers, their voices rising and falling with the rhythm of the drums. You feel the power of shared tradition all around you, everyone joined by the moon's gentle presence. A mainstream fact: the Aztecs carefully watched the phases of the moon, using them to mark time, schedule festivals, and guide planting and harvest. Moon rituals were a vital part of the city's spiritual calendar, blending myth, astronomy, and community celebration. As the night deepens, the festival shifts to feasting and storytelling. You share sweet tamales and listen as neighbors recount their favorite myths. How the moon gained her scars, how rabbits came to live upon her surface, how the city once went dark for a whole night before the moon's return. The stories linger like music in the warm air. You walk home by the bright path of moonlight on the water, a sense of peace settling over you. In Tenochtitlan, you realize every phase of the moon brings change and renewal, drawing the city together to celebrate, remember, and hope. That night, you fall asleep beneath the glow of the full moon, the sound of distant drums and laughter in your dreams, another thread in the tapestry of a city, forever dancing beneath the stars. The moon festival's magic lingers in your mind as dawn breaks, but today brings a different excitement. Your host family invites you to the city's largest ball court to witness a match of the legendary Mesoamerican ball game, effortlessly. The children chatter with anticipation, and the adults remind you that this is more than a game. It's a sacred spectacle, a blend of athleticism, ritual, and honor. You make your way through the city's energetic morning streets, joining a steady stream of citizens heading toward the ball court. The structure itself is impressive, long and narrow, its stone walls rising high, each side lined with carved rings and spectators gathering on stepped terraces. Vendors sell roasted maize and spicy cacao drinks, while musicians warm up with flutes and drums. A mainstream fact: the ball game was played throughout Mesoamerica, but in Tenochtitlan it carried special significance, symbolizing the cosmic struggle between light and darkness. Teams used their hips, knees, and elbows to keep a heavy rubber ball in play, aiming to pass it through a stone ring. The game was both entertainment and a ritual offering to the gods. The players, strong and focused, clothed in padded belts and bright sashes, enter the court with solemn ceremony. Before the first serve, a priest invokes the gods, scattering incense and flower petals at the center. The crowd hushes as the ball is tossed skyward. Then, with a thunderous cheer, the game begins. The action is fast and fierce. Players dive, spin, and launch the ball with astonishing skill, their movements echoing the rhythms of the universe. Each near miss or spectacular save draws gasps and applause from the crowd. You find yourself swept up in the excitement, cheering with your host family, your heart pounding with every close play. A quirky tidbit: children in the audience often play their own mini ball game with rag balls or even fruit, mimicking their heroes' moves. It's said that the luckiest child, whose toy ball lands in a friend's cooking pot at home, will have good fortune for the rest of the month. Midway through the match, the musicians play a triumphant melody as one team scores by sending the ball cleanly through the stone ring. The crowd erupts in celebration, tossing flowers onto the court. Vendors rush to sell snacks, and you're handed a roasted squash seed to nibble for luck. A mainstream fact: the ball game's outcome sometimes had ritual consequences. In some eras or for special matches, captives or even players might be sacrificed to ensure cosmic balance. But for most public games, the focus was on honor, teamwork, and the city's pride. As the game draws to a close, the victorious team is showered with flower garlands and gifts from the crowd. The opposing players are honored as well, sportsmanship is celebrated, and all the athletes are invited to join a community feast at day's end. You walk home in the golden afternoon, feeling exhilarated and a little sunburned, the sounds of the ball game echoing in your ears. Your host siblings chatter about their favorite plays, dreaming of training for the court themselves one day. That evening, as you share a meal of tamales and sweet beans, you realize that in Tenochtitlan, every part of life, work, ritual, play, is woven together, each supporting and celebrating the other. The city's heart beats in its games, its festivals, and the shared joy of its people. As night falls, you drift to sleep with visions of flying rubber balls, leaping athletes, and the wild cheers of the city, a reminder that here, Even play is nothing less than sacred. The day after the ball game, you awake to the scent of fresh tortillas and the promise of a new adventure. Your host mother is already bustling with preparations. Today, she explains, you'll accompany a group of Potika, the famed merchants of Tenochtitlan, as they set out on a trading mission to a distant lakeside town. It's a rare honor, and your host siblings bounce with excitement at the chance to see the world beyond the city's borders. You join the merchants at dawn. They are a striking group, dressed in finely woven cloaks, carrying packs adorned with bright feathers and intricate knots marking the contents: cacao, textiles, obsidian blades, and painted pottery. The Pochteca are respected for their skill, bravery, and knowledge of distant lands. They travel in well-organized bands, led by a calm, sharp-eyed elder who greets you with a nod and a wry smile. A mainstream fact, the Pochteca were more than simple traders. Acting as diplomats, spies, and explorers, they helped maintain the flow of goods and information throughout the empire. Their journeys could last weeks or months, and they were trusted with secrets as well as precious cargo. You set out along the bustling causeways, and then onto a broad canoe, gliding across the sparkling lake. The merchants share travel food, amaranth cakes, dried fish, and spicy honey, and swap stories of past journeys, mountain passes shrouded in mist, markets where gold changed hands, villages where language barriers were bridged with laughter and song. A quirky tidbit, Pochteca often carried talking bundles, small collections of beads, feathers, and knotted cords that helped them remember the languages, customs, and debts of each community they visited. Some say the most skilled merchants could read a market just by touching the right bundle in their pack. Your canoe docks at a thriving lakeside town, its market buzzing with colour and sound. The Pochteca quickly set up their stall, arranging their wares in patterns meant to attract both locals and visiting traders. You watch as they bargain with practiced ease, greeting old friends, exchanging news, and measuring out cacao beans for a painted gourd or a coil of freshwater pearls. A mainstream fact, Aztec markets were governed by strict rules of fairness. Official judges settled disputes, and all weights and measures were carefully checked. Merchants developed their own signs and hand gestures to negotiate deals discreetly, avoiding boast or insult. As the sun climbs higher, you help ferry goods between stalls, learning the art of the subtle trade, how to praise a shawl's weave, how to spot a fair price, how to smile and walk away if a deal can't be struck. You sample new foods: tart tamarind fruit, smoked lake fish, and a crumbly, fragrant cheese. When the trading is done, the Pochteca gather in a quiet circle to share a meal and a song of thanks for safe travels and profitable exchange. The elder merchant gifts you a small, knotted cord, a symbol of trust and memory, a reminder that you are now part of their story. As you return to Tenochtitlan, the city's towers rise on the horizon, golden in the late afternoon light. The merchants discuss their next destinations, already planning routes and alliances. Your host's siblings chatter excitedly, eager to tell their parents everything they learned. That night, as you help unpack the day's treasures, gleaming shells, new textiles, a precious handful of cacao, you realize that survival in Tenochtitlan isn't just about what grows in the fields or what's made in the workshops. It's about movement, goods, people, stories, and ideas flowing in and out, weaving the city into the wider world. You fall asleep with the gentle sway of the canoe still in your body, the glimmer of markets in your mind, and the knowledge that in this city, every journey is a thread in the great tapestry of life. After your adventure with the Pochteca, you return to the comforting routines of city life, but there's a new sense of anticipation in the air. Your host father explains that a festival of renewal is approaching, a time when the entire city joins in ritual cleansing, gratitude, and the setting of intentions for the coming year. Preparations begin days in advance. Streets and canals are swept clean, homes are repainted with fresh lime, and families repair everything from broken pots to fraying garments. The mood is both industrious and joyful. You join your host siblings in scrubbing the courtyard stones and hanging garlands of marigolds above doorways. A mainstream fact, the Aztecs observed several festivals of renewal throughout the year, the most important being the Nemontami, the 5 empty days at the end of the calendar cycle, and the Zumolpili, the new fire ceremony, held every 52 years. During these times, people purified their homes and themselves, made offerings to the gods, and symbolically renewed the world. The neighborhood bursts into activity. Artisans repaint murals with bright pigments, and neighbors share brooms and brushes, laughing as they clean. The youngest children compete to find the most trash or broken pottery. Their prize is a handful of tomatoes or a fragrant sprig of herbs. A quirky tidbiting on renewal days, it's customary to forgive old debts and quarrels. Neighbors visit each other's homes with gifts of food or flowers, shaking hands and exchanging blessings. Children invent playful arguments, just for the pleasure of making up again and sharing sweets. As the festival begins, you join your host family at dawn to offer copal incense and maize cakes at the household altar. The city quiets for a moment as everyone pauses to reflect and give thanks. Then, with the rising sun, the celebrations begin. Dancers in fresh costumes wail through the streets, musicians play joyful melodies, and families gather for feasts of beans, squash, and steaming atoll. A mainstream fact: temples and altars are adorned with flowers and painted banners. Priests lead processions to the water's edge, where offerings of jade, feathers, and food are cast into the lake. These rituals are believed to restore harmony between people, the gods, and the land. You're swept up in the festivities, helping to serve food, learning new dances, and even joining a circle of elders to hear stories of past renewals. The most memorable tale is about the last new fire ceremony, when the whole city waited in darkness until priests kindled the sacred flame atop a distant hill, signaling a new era of hope. As evening falls, families gather on rooftops and courtyards, lighting small fires and sharing wishes for health, peace, and abundance. Your host mother presses a sprig of marigold into your hand and invites you to add your wish to the family's. You whisper your hope for more adventures, more learning, and the continued warmth of this adopted home. That night, the city is aglow with firelight and laughter, the air scented with flowers and wood smoke. You fall asleep with the sense of being truly renewed, part of a community that believes in the power of second chances, fresh starts, and the endless weaving of hope into everyday life. The morning after the festival of renewal feels gentle and slow, as if the city itself is savoring a fresh start. Sunlight glimmers on the canals, and the air smells of flowers and clean earth. Today, your host family has arranged for you to spend the day with a local artisan, a skilled potter whose work is famous in the neighborhood and beyond. You walk to his workshop, a sunlit space beside the water, where shelves of bowls, cups, and incense burners are stacked in neat rows. The potter, a broad-shouldered man with clay, stained hands and a ready laugh, greets you warmly. He invites you to kneel beside the wheel, where he's already spinning a soft lump of clay, a mainstream fact. Pottery was an essential craft in Tenochtitlan, with families specializing in different techniques and forms. Potters supplied the city with everything from everyday cups and cooking pots to elaborate ceremonial vessels decorated with gods and animals. Clay was dug from lake beds and mixed with volcanic ash for strength. The potter demonstrates how to center the clay, coaxing it upward with steady hands until it forms a graceful vessel. You try your own hand, struggling at first but soon finding a rhythm. The potter jokes that every beginner makes a dancing bowl, a little wobbly but full of life. A quirky tidbit: it's said among potters that if your first bowl of the day spins off the wheel and lands upright, you'll have good luck. Today, a young apprentice's bowl does just this, and the whole workshop cheers, promising him an extra sweet cake at lunch. You help mix pigments from ground minerals and flowers, then try painting your bowl with simple glyphs. Waves for water, a spiral for the wind, a small frog for good fortune. The potter and his apprentices show you how to fire the pots in a domed kiln, feeding it with carefully chosen wood to control the heat. A mainstream fact: finished pots were traded in the markets and sent as tribute to the capital. The best pieces might even be chosen for offerings at the temple or as gifts to visiting dignitaries. Pottery workshops were hives of activity, where knowledge was passed down in families and through apprenticeships. At midday, everyone pauses for a meal of beans, tortillas, and squash, sharing stories and gossip. The potter tells you how he learned his craft from his grandmother, and how every bowl, no matter how humble, carries something of the city's spirit. In the afternoon, the workshop welcomes neighbors who come to collect new wares or commission special pieces. A priest arrives to order incense burners for an upcoming ceremony, and a merchant discusses designs for a set of painted cups to trade at the lakeside markets. Before you leave, the potter presents you with your own bowl, still a little uneven, but glazed with care. Every hand leaves its mark, he says, That's how a city remembers us, long after we're gone. You carry your bowl home with pride, feeling a new connection to the city's makers and the quiet artistry woven into daily life. That night, as you share supper with your host family, you use your own bowl for the first time, savoring the food and the story held in its walls. As you drift to sleep, you realize that in Tenochtitlan, survival is as much about creation as it is about endurance. Every pot, every song, every story is a promise that life here will keep spinning, always finding new shapes, always full of meaning. The next morning, with your new bowl carefully stowed away, your host family invites you to spend a day beyond the city's bustle, helping relatives who farm the famous chinampas. The air is cool and fresh as you travel by canoe along the shimmering canals, passing herons and dragonflies, the city's towers fading behind stands of willow and cypress. Your hosts greet you from a floating garden thick with maize, squash, beans, and bright marigolds. The chinampas are marvels of ingenuity, narrow plots built atop the shallow lake, edged with woven reeds and anchored by living trees. The earth is rich and dark, and every row seems to burst with life. A mainstream facting, chinampas, sometimes called floating gardens, were the backbone of Tenochtitlan's food supply. Farmers built them by layering mud, lake sediment, and plant matter, creating fertile plots that could be farmed year-round. This innovation allowed the city to feed its large population, even during dry seasons. You wade in to help, your feet cool in the mud, learning to plant young maize shoots in neat rows. Older children teach you how to tie bean vines to support sticks, and how to scoop water from the canal to irrigate the beds. Everyone works together, sharing jokes and song, the labor made light by the company. A quirky tidbitting, farmers sometimes tuck tiny clay figurines or colored stones into the chinampa soil for luck. If a plant grows especially well, it's said the earth spirits are pleased, and the lucky spot will be marked for next year's planting. At midday, you gather on a reed mat for a meal of fresh tomatoes, beans, and sweet, juicy tomatoes picked right from the vine. Elders talk of seasons past and share advice on coaxing stubborn gourds or keeping herons from the fish traps. You listen, feeling a deep sense of respect for the farmers' knowledge and the close relationship they maintain with land and water. A mainstream fact, farming was a community effort managed by extended families and neighborhood groups. Calculate. Surpluses were sold in city markets, and a portion was set aside as tribute to the city's temples and rulers. After lunch, you help harvest squash blossoms for the evening meal, then paddle out to check fish traps set along the canal edges. Children giggle as they chase frogs and rescue wayward ducklings, and you find yourself laughing along, the worries of city life slipping away in the gentle rhythm of the fields. As the sun dips lower, the work finishes with a small gratitude ritual. Everyone offers a pinch of maize to the water, thanking the lake for another day's abundance. Your hosts fill a basket with produce for you to take home, a gift of the earth, and a reminder of the city's dependence on its farmers. Traveling back by canoe, you watch the city's Sittal Hatuet reappear, golden in the late afternoon light. You realize that Tenochtitlan's greatness is rooted as much in these quiet gardens and hard, working families as in its temples and palaces. That night, as you share fresh chinampa vegetables with your host family, you taste the care and tradition in every bite. You fall asleep with the scent of earth and water in your memory, grateful for the patient hands that keep the city nourished and alive. The day after your adventure among the chinampas, your host family suggests a visit to one of Tenochtitlan's most awe-inspiring places, a great temple at the heart of the city. You join a steady stream of worshippers, merchants, and officials walking toward the Templo Mayor, the towering double pyramid rising above the plaza. Its steps are dazzling in the morning sunlight, painted banners snapping in the breeze, the air humming with chants, and the fragrance of copal incense. The plaza is alive with activity. Priests in feathered cloaks tend to offerings, vendors sell miniature clay gods and flowers, and musicians play slow, solemn melodies. The temple's twin shrines, one to Huitzilopochtli, god of the sun and war, and one to Tlaloc, god of rain, stand side by side, reminders of the city's dual devotion to power and sustenance. A mainstream fact, the Templo Mayor was the spiritual and ceremonial heart of Tenochtitlan. It was rebuilt several times, each layer growing larger and more ornate. The city's most important rituals were held here, including offerings to the gods and ceremonies marking the cycles of the sun, rain, and harvest. You join your host family in a procession up the temple steps, Every few steps, devotees pause to scatter petals or leave tiny offerings, beans, cacao, feathers, on the broad terraces. The climb is steep, but each landing offers a breathtaking view of the city's canals, markets, and distant mountains. A quirky tidbit: it's said that if you whisper a wish to the wind at the temple's summit, the gods might answer with a sign, sudden gust, a bird's call, or the unexpected laughter of a stranger. At the top, priests perform a ritual in a swirl of color and music. They pour water and maize onto altars, chant prayers in ancient Nahuatl, and release clouds of incense into the sky. The crowd joins in with songs and rhythmic clapping, a pulse of shared energy that seems to vibrate in your bones. A mainstream fact: major feasts and festivals at the Templo Mayor involved the whole city. Commoners and nobles alike contributed offerings, and the temple was not just a center for religion. It was a place to meet friends, hear the latest news, and witness the power of the empire with your own eyes. After the ceremony, you explore the plaza below. Children play a game of chasing the sun, running in circles and laughing, while their parents shop for sweets and garlands. You meet a scribe who explains the meaning of the glyphs carved into the temple's stones, and a vendor who gives you a small clay whistle shaped like a hummingbird. As the sun reaches its peak, your host family finds a shaded spot to share food brought from home, tamales wrapped in leaves and cool water flavored with lime. You talk about the ceremony, the stories in the stone carvings, and the feeling of standing atop the city, so close to the sky. Walking home, you're struck by the temple's powerful presence, how it anchors Tenochtitlan, drawing everything together. You realize that the city's strength comes not only from its canals and gardens, but from the shared rituals and beliefs that unite its people. That night, you drift to sleep with the scent of incense still in your hair, the memory of the city spread out beneath you, and a whispered wish to the wind, hoping that the gods, and Tenochtitlan itself, will remember your journey here.